tonight. You want to give the instructions? Oh, they did. Okay.
No, they didn't.
Can you hear me? Can you give the instructions for the translation?
Yes, of course. Buenas noches. Se utilizará la función de interpretación de Zoom para soporte en inglés y español. Todos los participantes de esta llamada deben seleccionar su idioma de preferencia, haciendo clic en el idioma correspondiente cuando el anfitrión active la función de interpretación. Dicha función se encuentra en el panel de herramientas, en el icono del globo terráqueo. El modo de interpretación de esta reunión será el simultáneo. Gracias por su atención y colaboración. Good evening. The Zoom interpretation feature will be used in this Zoom meeting for English and Spanish support. All participants on this call must select their language of preference by clicking the language when the host turns on the interpretation feature. This is found in the world icon located on your feature panel. Interpretation for this meeting will be conducted simultaneously. Thank you for your attention and collaboration.
Okay, thank you for that. So remember that this meeting is being recorded. So any sounds you make can be shown in the Zoom meeting and in the recording. So if you can please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance tonight. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, and with that, we are moving to 1C, which is the Living Land Acknowledgement. Sunnyvale School District is located on the ancestral and unceded land of the Mukwiba Oglon tribe, who have peacefully honored and cared for this land for thousands of years. We recognize that every member of the Sunnyvale community continues to benefit from the use and occupation of this land. We acknowledge our responsibility to learn from the wisdom of the Oglon people and to consider how we might work to repair injustices and to move forward together in honorable ways. Thank you. And with that, we move to item 2, which is the approval of the agenda. So the board may delete items from this posted agenda and may also add items as necessary pursuant of government code. If such items need to be added as an emergency situations and defined also by such code, it is recommended the board to approve the agenda. So do we have a motion to approve the agenda? Yes, do we have any public comment on the number 2 item, either here or online? Remember that if you want to give comments online, you need to raise your electronic hand. No? Okay, with that, do we have
I move approval of the agenda.
okay, thank you. Do we have a second?
I will second.
Okay, with that, do we have a vote to approve the agenda as it is? Everybody say aye. Okay, with that, we approve the agenda for tonight. And we move to our study session, which tonight is a study session on extended learning opportunities. And for that, we have Mr. Paul Slayton, our Director of Student Support Services. There you go.
Hello. Thanks, Jesus. Hi. It's not on. That might be okay. No. Now we're talking. There we go. Hi, everybody. I'm moving on from being called Paul Satan again. That was an old one from when I was in junior high. So if I'm flustered, just kidding. So we're talking about extended learning, and I inherited directorship of KLAS in July, and I've been doing a learning curve of my own. I do not pretend to be at the end of that curve. So there may be some of this that's redefining terms that you already are very familiar with, but I kind of wanted to start at just defining what it is we're talking about and how we're moving. So before we get anywhere, what we're looking at are existing KLAS, Kids Learning After School programs that we have in the district, how those need to be stabilized and improved, and then how do we expand responsibly and at a tempo we can sustain. Ideally, at the beginning, we talked in student services about a vision for this. Not that it's a competing vision for what we're doing, but just in program enhancement really gets tricky if we don't start knowing where we're headed. We want to look at equitable extended learning across all 10 schools that is fostering academics, personal growth, and whole child development. That's a really key term that I'll define a little bit more clearly in just a sec. But the trick is not just trying to do tutoring and not just trying to do counseling. Neither of those is responsible enough to get kids to succeed long-term. So here's where I'm starting. This is my glossary. This is for me as much as anyone else. Whoops, I'm going back. KLAS, Kids Learning After School, is not ACES. We don't have an ACES program. ACES is a funding structure that I memorized what it stood for before I walked up here, and it is gone. And it is after school education and safety.
There you
It's
go.
been around 20 years. It's well-funded, it's established, and we use this for a lot of things. But so there isn't an ACES program. We have ACES funded programs, but we also do braided funding where we use multiple places to fund different programs. So ACES is a grant that's looking pretty stable, but it isn't a program in any school district, really. ELOP, Extended Learning Opportunities Program, is newer funding, about 2 years old. And because of this, we have the opportunity to do this reimagining that we're talking about. This was in place, it was in process pre-COVID, just randomly, and now it's still available. So it's really fortuitous for us to say we have funding to look at after-school extended learning. Summer school, my colleague John's going to talk more about, but summer school isn't a KLAS program, but Kids Learning After School exists in summer school as one of the supports we have. So this is for me, visual person. What we have right now, Kids Learning After School, that's from here forward KLAS, is when we say the aftercare programs at 7 of our schools. KLAS runs after the school day to 6 p.m. daily. Students enroll. That's a funded and established program, tons of things to improve. But when we say KLAS right now, that's what we're talking about. As we move forward, that's going to become kind of the broader term for these things. After school care for high needs kids, summer enrichment is going to be a KLAS program, tutoring, because we know academic tutoring has to be in place. That's going to kind of be something that's a KLAS program, and after school activities that aren't necessarily year long or mandatory, but are like enrichment, things like sports, gardening, art clubs, things like that.
Clarifying question.
Sure.
So just to clarify, so you're saying that KLAS right now, that's an acronym that we came up with as a district?
Yes, Kids Learning After School. It isn't Sunnyvale only. I've seen it elsewhere, but it is
So,
an us.
because when people now, they say, oh, my kids go to KLAS, they're talking about something that's ACES funding or braided in some way.
Yes.
But, so if we start talking about all things as KLAS, like, that's just a matter of for us to rebrand that.
It is. We've got some defining to do. And
Yeah.
KLAS being a set of programs is kind of where we're headed.
Thank you.
Things like identity is a big deal because we don't want, there's a reason why that we'll actually talk about. But did I answer?
Yes.
Okay.
Got it.
I have a question as well.
Sure.
So is the goal to rebrand KLAS as including the other after-school activities such as Catalyst and band?
Depends what it could be. Band Catalyst specifically is an offsite program we're contracting with to bring them under KLAS is probably not in the near future. Having something similar that's actually housed with us and created by us may be possible. I do think down the road, we want Kids Learning After School to be a suite of programs at all 10 schools. Right now, KLAS is at 7 schools and it is an aftercare program that's running at those schools.
Similarly, the after-school activities, are you including in those the ones that are not funded by the district, but maybe PTA funded or otherwise?
Yes, we're actually going to talk about that.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah, because ultimately, it was like we worked that out. As we look at this, Eileen, we have a couple of things that should be kind of our driving goals for this process, not for the program, but in looking at this year, we should be coming with equity and inclusion. That does not mean there are the same programs available at every school. We'll talk about that in a sec. But making sure all schools have access to quality extended learning is one of the goals. Also developing the whole child. meaning we are not just saying Sunnyvale does math enrichment after school. We're saying there's more than that. We also want to look at mental health. We want to look at social skills. So the whole child should be a goal. As we look at this, we should look at collaborative community work. We're already starting with community schools. Huge opportunity to extend that as we review extended learning. The final two for us, quality and engagement. We absolutely must monitor what we're creating and deploying to make sure we don't go super wide. Everything's available at every school, but we aren't monitoring for whether it's quality. Finally, sustainability, that we don't do a huge year and then it was great and nobody has it 5 years from now. So responsibly creating programs instead of just kind of responding and saying we should have the same thing at every school starting in November. So that's kind of the guiding goals for what we're going to talk about. Okay, there'll be time for questions, but also please jump in if I'm not being clear. And I've gotten one slow down that I'm responding to by slowing down. 4 phases. These are concurrent. These are not firm dates we can attach. All 4 of these are the way that I think my little branch in student services wants to start exploring after school support. I'm going to go through each one very briefly, say what we're doing and what's happening right now. Okay. Phase 1 is what's going on right now, and that is strengthening what the existing after school programs are. So the enrichment period here is to expand current KLAS to include more music, more art, physical activity that's structured as opposed to just recess, and the reverse field trip. If you don't, I'm going to define this term. It makes common sense, but I had to ask. A reverse field trip is when the kids stay put and the field trip people come to them. A lot of nods. I had no idea. As a middle school guy, I was like, that's just, what are you talking about? So that process exists, but we need to streamline it to get people on campus as soon as possible. We want to deliver weekly socio-emotional learning lessons to KLAS students and start to incorporate more frequent student-parent feedback. Right now, we do it once a year, actually twice a year. We think there needs to just be a cultivated, hey, my kid came home and said this happened. That doesn't occur right now with KLAS programs. Parents are happy to have that, and they pick the child up, and we don't foster that communication. The second piece for phase 1 is professional development. This is very difficult. KLAS paraprofessionals do not gather regularly because their program burden is huge. Every day school is open, KLAS is available. That we start the first Monday of the school year and we go almost to the last day of school. So we want to be able to gather the paraprofessionals to do training, enhancement, but there isn't a simple way to hold KLAS off and gather all the people that do it without impacting families. So we're talking to the KLAS site coordinators to see what their solutions would be to be able to start doing some training. What's happening right now? So already this year, Bridget, you want to go?
With the, just to clarify,
Mhm.
they are, they're after school, so there is daytime, it would just be, it's a cost issue.
The vast majority, it's a good question. The vast majority of KLAS paraprofessionals are 6-hour paraprofessionals with us already and 2-hour KLAS people. So their school day, they're already with kids, serving kids. So one of our models was, we'll just pull them during the day. The impact of paraprofessional support is just prohibitive. So there wasn't a way to gather this group to do something like an enhanced classroom management training.
Got it, thank you.
Sure. So please, no, go.
Similar to Bridget's question, does that mean that they are also committed on staff learning days?
Not all of them. Some of the KLAS paraprofessionals can do KLAS specific training, but the majority go to their 6-hour day, which is that para, we want them in the classrooms piece. Can we steal some of that time? I'm thinking that's going to be part of what we do, but the simple answer is most are in para support on those staff training days, the classified days.
On the staff training days though, wouldn't they be at the KLAS site? Because the KLAS is open and kids don't come to school on the staff
So on that day, they're as classified staff, they're not in that day. That's not a work day for the
That's what
certificated.
okay, so they're just not, yeah,
Correct.
so that would be,
So it's an opportunity next year, pull them in, extra cost, one of the possibilities. Mhm. So what started this year, we've piloted behavioral technician support at 5 KLAS sites. This means there's actually a BT who is at KLAS from the end of the school day till 6 p.m. daily. The goal was not to increase the number of students we could have. So there's a ratio of adults to students, 1 to 20. We didn't add this person to say, now you can take 20 more kids. The purpose of this behavior technician is to do training of the KLAS staff to do behavior modification and classroom management in the place. So they're there, they're part of the team, but they have the expertise to say, hey, when we're doing recess, here's a way to do it with a little kind of social awareness, or here's how to manage high need students. That's the move right now that's just started this school year. Also, they'll be delivering weekly SEL lessons in the KLAS environment. Those are getting developed with Rachel Bacosa, who's our TOSA in charge of socio-emotional learning. And that's another goal for KLAS students to get a little resiliency. Why, how do you do homework management? If you're struggling in class, how do you address a teacher? Things like that. The third thing we've started is connecting with a community organization, Valley Sports Association. Valley Sports provides kind of off-the-shelf sports engagement. They've submitted a proposal for 2 days a week at every KLAS site right now and doing soccer. There's a couple of different organized games they would bring, and KLAS coordinators are clearing time in their schedule if we can approve Valley Sports to come in. We have to look at the cost and decide if it's the way to do it, but it's one of the ways to have someone else coming, doing something with the students, and possibly us pulling the staff to do PD on those days. And then the reverse field trips, Sharmila Velmarugan has done a whole re-envision of how people can sign up, and science groups. There's a couple of animal-like guys that come in, you know what I'm talking about. So the idea is that these get scheduled now, and the guy with the box of animals can get to the site. Okay, so I'm going to go briefly on phases 2 through 4 because I don't want to go into too much detail. Phase 2, critical that we look at what is occurring at other schools. This was the catalyst thing Eileen mentioned. Some schools have non-district funded after-school opportunities. This is very typical. Schools that are, some have parent connections with organizations that are coming in. Some PTAs get very active and say, we're going to have an art program for 2 weeks in October. So that collection of activities is something we need to look at to see what can be duplicated at other sites and how we would accomplish that. This doesn't mean we just duplicate at all sites. We meet with principals and we say with the principals, what is happening after school through the year, who's in charge of it, and what's the history? How did it get there? If it's effective, it's a great thing where we've vetted a group at Cherry Chase, for example, and we can see if they can broaden to other sites. The way to do this is with focus groups. So in the fall window for Panorama, principals will be doing a survey with me of existing after-school programs. This isn't through Panorama, it's just concurrent with that survey window. And we'll be looking at what they offer and kind of the history of how it got there. And then looking at what families are saying they need that isn't there. So those are the 2 data points we need before we start adding programs. Bridget, you know? Okay.
I'm gonna wait.
Got it.
I got questions.
So phase 3 is monitoring what we're putting in. We cannot add a tutoring program at a school and just say we did it. We've got to monitor for effectiveness, cost, quality. Are our teachers staffing it? If not, why? That entire process has to be just ongoing. And then expanding after school learning to all 10 schools, whether it's the traditional aftercare KLAS or it looks different, that's totally really needs to be up for grabs. Part of my thing here, we could do the work to hire, train, and do an aftercare KLAS at any of the schools that don't have it, at Cherry Chase. And the student population may not be there with that as a need. So we don't want to come with a solution until we can honestly say, what is this community asking for? Hard thing too, what they're asking for may not be possible, and it may not be a need that the district is looking to fill with our vision. So we have to be conscious of that. And then finally, I had talked about showcasing the end of the year and what we're trying to do. For the continuous improvement, we started an MOU with the city of Sunnyvale, who is going to open transitional kindergarten KLAS, starting at 3 sites, San Miguel, Bishop, and Ellis right now. The reason those 3 were selected is they have the largest TK population. This didn't start at the beginning of the school year. Ideally, we're looking for an October start after the end of minimum days. The MOU is almost there, and then we got to do the facilities problem. And once we fix that, we should be able to start enrollment. The final one is the obvious one, scaling up and sustainably impacting as many schools as possible. We do need long-term commitment if we're going to do this. It is not a just start the program at every school. And we hopefully want to partner with outside organizations, Sunnyvale Educational Foundation. How do we fund and deploy extended learning, whether it's tutoring or a sports program at as many schools as possible? So, Bridget, you were waiting.
No, you're clear.
Okay, any questions about where we sit right now and where we're headed right now? I welcome it. We're kind of in learning mode, but we also don't want to wait and study this with kids not getting support.
Okay. So with this, we move to public comments. So if you have any comment in the public, I suppose online, as we don't have anyone here, please raise your hand in Zoom. Okay, how many do we have? Peggy? Okay. Okay, two people. Perfect. This person provides an opportunity for members of the public to address this particular item, item 3 on the study session. And we have how many speakers today? 2? Okay, so each of them will have 3 minutes. Lisa?
First up is Peggy Brewster.
Okay, Peggy? Nice to have you.
Hi, everybody. This is Peggy Shen Brewster. Thank you so much for having this conversation. As you well know, we have a lot of parents that are enthusiastic about the possibility of after-school care, as well as enrichment activities after school. And we do know that there are a lot of parents in my area going to Bishop, attendance area Bishop, where they are choosing not to take their kids to public school because of the lack of after-school care. So I'm really excited that we're moving in this direction. One of the guiding discussion questions was if you're, what would it look like to have equitable after-school enrichment and extended learning on campuses? And I do want to suggest that that might look like providing music instruction for all students in all schools. And that could be also during the day, and as well as maybe a starting arts program, a starting arts play or musical. That is a huge demand that we're seeing in our Title I schools right now, when the principals are applying for the SEF grants. I also would like to mention that I've talked to the city of Sunnyvale, Jackie Guzman, and she is happy to work with you to provide some on-campus activities. At the district I used to work at in Mountain View Wisman, there is a Beyond the Bell program, which is a partnership with the city of Mountain View and the school district. And the students are invited to learn to join that. It's completely free of cost, but they're invited based on their benchmark scores. And there's especially a focus on the students that are like nearing proficiency. So that is an interesting model to look at. At Mountain View Wisman, they also have a right at school, very flexible system. So perhaps these types of programs could be considered in the KLAS suite of options that you're looking into. Oh, and the one more thing I want to mention is that we've been talking about you've improved transportation for the students at the middle schools. And I see the buses passing my house every day, which makes me very happy. But I do want to make sure that those students are also considered when we're talking about after school enrichment, like they should be able to also partake in some of these activities or have different kind of care and not have to worry about not being able to get home because their school bus already left at the end of school. So anyways, I'm really looking forward to a very more robust, but also gentle and sustainable build up to this program. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next person.
We actually have two more raised hands.
Okay.
Next up is Petra Houtz, followed by Gita Golakota.
Okay. So the next one, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for inviting us to speak today and for sharing that amazing presentation. Really excited to see the growth and attention to quality. I am a parent of 2 students at Bishop Elementary, a kindergartner and a 3rd grader. And as we've kind of entered the school year, both my husband and I are full-time workers and tried to do the work from home and raise kids at the same time all through COVID, and have found this really difficult to try and figure out after school care. We've ended up paying for somebody to come to our home. And while that's wonderful, part of the reason we're also really excited about being at Bishop is the community that we have there, and are disappointed that through that we're not able to participate. There's not enough space in the programs at Bishop. And so I'm just also, in terms of thinking about the equity issue, there are some of us who can afford to pay for programs, at least to some level and at varying levels across the district. And so I'm curious about opportunities for kind of tiered access. So some of us pay some so that others can also participate, and making that a sustainable element of the programming. With that said, I think that I want to emphasize the importance of free programming for our community as well. I worked for a number of years at the Boys and Girls Clubs of the Peninsula and was able to see how partnerships with schools, between nonprofit organizations, between after-school programs, and the schools can really make a difference. And especially when they're at the schools where kids are attending, with paraeducators who are in the school day and working out of school time, with teachers who know the students who are coming and supporting after school, and really focused on that relationship piece. And so just really want to kind of emphasize that opportunity, as well as piggyback on what Peggy said, thinking about just the opportunity for the arts and athletics. I was glad to hear some partnerships with athletic programming on campus for the after school space, whether it's for students like mine who could potentially take care of part, or students who are already in the KLS program. So just really appreciate you working on this. Also would be happy to help bring in and work towards bringing in resources where possible. So thank you so much, and I'm glad you're working on this.
Thank you. Thanks. And the next?
And the last hand raised is Gita Golakota.
Okay, thank you. Please, you have 3 minutes.
Hi, District Board. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak and express my thoughts on this. I think extending KLS for all schools and extending more programs to all the schools is a very much required thing. Like Peggy said, in our school, at least I come from Ellis Elementary, and in my son's class, at least I observed that most of the people that are sending their kids to Ellis Elementary, they are no longer homeowners. All the homeowners are choosing to send their kids to private schools because they can't afford to send to the private school and pay for the mortgage, both of them in the same thing. So they are choosing to send them to private school, especially because the aftercare is becoming a problem. And for newer families to come in, this is becoming a huge problem. Our school ratings are falling down and all these things are happening. So I think this program would be really helpful to kind of keep the community contained and keep the community engaged And our school district's mission is to provide every student with a strong foundation of academic, behavioral, and social emotional skills to prepare them for success in a diverse, challenging, and changing world. And forming this community inside the school itself after school hours would be extremely helpful to build that kind of sense of community, sense of belonging in the community, and the social emotional skills that come with partaking in all these programs along with their peers. It will be a strong foundation that will continue from the classroom to this program. So I wish you strongly consider this program and provide some relief to the homeowners in the area and new homeowners that wish to come into this area. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for coming and talking with us.
Actually, I have one more hand.
Well, one more, okay, sure.
Next up is Jennifer Lang.
Yes, please go ahead.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Lang. I am was the after-school program coordinator for our enrichment classes at Fairwood. We have an extensive program. We offered over 11 different classes this past year with over 376 of our students participating, some taking multiple classes. I would love to see this branch out to other schools in the district. It doesn't just need to be at Fairwood. Our parents love coming an hour later to pick up kids after school, letting the kids have a place where they can try something new, get on the stage for the first time, try skateboarding in a place that they are familiar with people and students that they are familiar with. Our parents love our programs. It is very difficult as a parent volunteer to coordinate all of these on our own. There's several communication breakdowns between the school office staff, the principal, the vendors themselves can be crazy and need hand-holding, 100% of the time. And even with the district, with the whole new application process, we nearly lost our band program this year that has been at Fairwood for many years. Our students look forward to picking up an instrument before they get into middle school. And we nearly lost that because of the new district policies this year with rentals. I do think that having some programs in a district overall to all the schools, such as a band, an art, a sports after-school program, so all of our students can participate. So students from Bishop don't have to come over to Fairwood to take a chess class like they did last year. There are ways to do it. I'm sure the district can get a better deal working with vendors if they have multiple school sites that these vendors are working at, plus the communication, scholarship opportunities. When everything is done at a group, as a group, things can be better instead of one individual parent such as me or Monica this year who's taking over the program from me. After 2 years, that was enough for me. Just being able to share it with other people in the district, I think would be great. So please think about expanding KLAS, letting KLAS kids participate in after-school programs that are already at the school. I know there's been an issue with that at Fairwood. If you miss so many hours in KLAS, you're kicked out from what I've heard. So kids are missing out on opportunities that are already there for the kids. But thank you for bringing this up and letting me speak tonight.
Sure, thank you. Thank you for being part of tonight's meeting, everybody. Are we done with public comments? Perfect. So it's time for us to start in our board discussion about the study session. Well, first of all, I really sorry. Thank you all for putting everything together.
The board hasn't had a chance.
Almost to my chair. I want to point out, I almost made it.
Getting extra steps in.
What's that?
We're
Yeah.
getting extra steps in.
Oh, well, yeah, thank you for all your work on this. Great. And please, who wants to start?
I'll go. I just have one. You were talking about, is it on? Is it
Yep.
mic on? Okay. The behavior technicians, I'm just curious, like their level, like kind of their qualifications, or does that make sense? Like what, like behavior technicians, like what are they coming to the table with?
Chin Chu, who's in charge of them, is actually here. Chin, do you mind stepping up and talking about qualifications?
Hey, hi, yes, so our behavior technicians, well, I guess these behavior technicians in particular are part of the BIS department, the Behavior Intervention Services Department. So part of their day job is actually providing behavior support for the other half before KLAS starts, and then they go over to KLAS. So they actually have a lot of the same supports as our usual behavior technicians do. A lot of them come in with experience in doing applied behavior analysis work, either in the clinical setting or the home setting or something like that. But if they don't come in with that, we provide it. So we do like a full-on training on the basic principles of applied behavior analysis during their day job portion. Their behavior intervention services supervisor or behavior specialist is constantly providing supervisory support for them. So overlaps, coaching, modeling, and the application of those principles to the students on their caseload. And then they have like pretty pointed staff development throughout the year. And if they're 11-month employees, as these employees are, they also get additional staff development during the summer. So if they don't come in with it, that's the kind of support that they get on an ongoing basis.
Okay, a quick follow-up, so the behavior supervisors, are those like psychologists?
No,
Like,
they're.
what's a behavior supervisor then for them?
I
Sorry,
need to get my own slides with glossaries. Yeah, so our behavior intervention supervisors are like, I guess, there are behavior experts. They're the ones, some of them have certifications from the board. They're board certified behavior analysts. Some of them just have extensive experience, and working with students who have behavioral needs. And so a lot of them provide the case supervision and management primarily for students who have behavior services on their IEPs or 504s, but they also work at the site level with the site administrative teams for students who are just demonstrating major behaviors. And so they are the ones who oversee those cases. They'll go in and assess the behaviors to see what's going on, what's contributing. They'll develop a behavior intervention plan of some kind to be implemented, and then they'll coach and train behavior technicians if they are involved in implementing that, or whoever is involved, like the teachers, related service providers, so forth. And then they'll take the data, monitor it, tweak the interventions, that kind of thing.
Great, that's helpful. Thank you.
Yep, welcome. Other questions about behavior technicians?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm familiar with behavioral technicians and ABA in regard to kids on the autism spectrum. Is this something that are there a lot of kids on the autism spectrum in KLAS, or is this something that's being broadly applied to all the kids?
It's the latter. Yeah, so prior, when the program first came to Sunnyvale, it was primarily focused on students who had autism. But with it becoming a district-based program, we really expanded our scope because we understand that not just students who are on the spectrum might have behaviors, right, that impact their learning. And so why should we be delivering services only to one set of students who have this particular diagnostic label and not everybody who has these challenges? Because ABA principles and strategies, they can be effective with any person, and research that indicates animals and stuff like that too. So, yeah.
I have reservations about ABA as a field.
Yes.
And
I don't think they do.
Applied behavior analysis.
I know, I don't think that this is all ABA.
Yeah,
This is not
but-
all ABA, I think this is just.
Yeah, and I understand that there's reservations. I've heard a lot about those reservations, right? In terms of, just people who've had bad experiences with ABA in terms of forced compliance and that kind of thing. But that's not all that it is. But so, I guess I don't want to also stray too much from the focus today.
Like
but-
just, I don't even know what, is this the mic that we hate?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, so, but I think that just to clarify, my experience with the district with the behavior technicians is not that they're all in there doing, straight up ABA, but it's just that process of analyzing, seeing if there's anything in the environment, or noticing when behaviors occur, and then trying to come in and problem solve with the teacher and with the student or with the students, and trying to create a safer, more productive learning environment, and so that's, I don't think it's the textbook ABA that you see, with the whole thing.
Yeah.
I mean, and probably it's a version of it, but it's the Sunnyvale version. I think it's pretty good.
Yeah, and we're gonna, like, you know, we're going to be looking at the individual student, right? And how to apply the strategies the most appropriately to that, you know, to whatever's going on for that student, given their context, right? Respecting things like, you know, the assent, those kinds of things. Right, and of course, we're also providing training for our BTs, not just in ABA, but other things like, you know, trauma-informed care and that kind of stuff. Because sometimes I think that's where some of the conflict does come, right? Where ABA and the application of it can feel traumatic.
And plus, all the people teaching at KLAS have not had all the training that the teachers have in trauma-informed teaching and stuff like that. So they're kind of a bridge. I think it's great. I mean,
I guess my question is if that is the best tool, but it sounds like other tools are being implemented as well, and it's not just that, so.
Yeah, our behavior technicians also do things like provide the social skills groups for our students, right? So there's active skills teaching and that kind of thing, which is why, you know, we're talking about bringing that into the KLAS program, because a lot of our technicians have that skill and that experience in providing social skills, curriculum teaching, and that kind of thing.
Is there an outsized number of children currently enrolled in KLAS who have behavioral needs?
Is there an outsized? I didn't hear the first part.
What percent?
What percent?
Yeah, so we don't have a percentage that way. What we didn't intend was BT support to change the ability of KLAS to enroll students with higher behaviors. That's not the goal. So first year, phase one, we want to stabilize and train KLAS paraprofessionals. So students aren't excluded because of behavior in KLAS, but there isn't a percentage that we could find information from their day, how many had referrals out of class, things like that, but that's not data we pull right now. So the BTs were not put in KLAS because there were high needs behaviors manifested.
I have a question. Yes. Oh, yeah, thanks. It kind of works on the table. It works on the table. Okay, so the issue with KLAS, like for the nomenclature of it, I feel like when people hear KLAS, they hear that it's a $180 a year program. They think of it as that $1 a day program. So when you say we want to expand KLAS to all sites, people are like, well, that's super, because we would love to have a $1 a day program for our site, because there are families at every site that could benefit from that program. And you know, I did hear what the person was saying about a tiered schedule and things like that. But the numbers enrolled in KLAS, it was part of our questions that we asked. You know, just the fact that it's 453 students out of over 5,000 students that we have, it's just, you know, it's such a small percentage of probably what the need is for after school care, not enrichment, not, you know, not 1 hour of something occasionally for a couple of weeks, like regular childcare. So I honestly cannot imagine how you would be asking people if regular, reliable childcare, more of it were available at every school site. I can't imagine they would say, no, we don't need that. I mean, I will be shocked if that is what happens. The other thing is, I feel like it's great that we have KLAS and we have all these, you know, I love the magical schedule. You know, it's very balanced. I love it that I want to have sports at every school. I want to have art. I want to have something at every school that's affordable for people. So I really do believe that we can do that. But I feel like we, as a district, when you're creating the suite of things, we really need to think about academic support, because we just have so many students who are far below grade level. And by the time they get to middle school and they're entering middle school, like 3 or 4 years below grade level, there is a lot of them. And there's just no way to, I mean, we can try to make them feel better in so many ways, but if they were feeling more academically confident and, you know, that might alleviate a lot of the issues that we're seeing with our middle schoolers, you know, for just even anxiety. So, you know, I feel like, you know, whether or not, like, I understand that KLAS, they're not eligible for transportation services unless they're McKinney-Vento students, and that because parents will typically pick up because it's available till 6 p.m. But I really feel strongly that we need to have transportation options in place for all of these after-school programs, like especially the ones that end earlier, the ones that are like the, 1 hour after school or whatever that cycle is, because academically, we just have such a driving need for it. And then connecting the kids and connecting the students to the school, to their identity as, whole people, and to like this idea that they belong there in school, that they belong in high school for the programs that they're going to possibly be eligible for in high school. I just really feel that we just have to make them eligible for that. And so, and my understanding was that if it's a tutorial program, they're allowed to miss KLAS, right?
That's correct.
So if it's like a school run tutorial, but we were talking, I think Isabel was talking, and Mike, you guys were talking to the Hispanic Foundation, and they were talking about bringing tutoring for after school programs. Like, I don't know, because it's a federally funded program, I don't know if we would be able to double dip there. But it seems like the KLAS kids, like for the $1 a day, then they're not allowed to get the academic stuff. Like we have to make sure the academic stuff's available.
Yeah, it's not that exclusive. If it's an on-site program, we have some pretty good flexibility to be able to allow them access.
Even if it's with someone like the Hispanic Foundation vendor?
Yes, there's
for academics?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a couple of ways to do it, especially if the parents are into them having the tutoring support. That's solvable.
Okay, and then I just want to note, so we have 7 schools. All of them except for CMS have a waiting list.
Yes.
Bishops has the biggest waiting list. When you think about, like you said, you're doing all 4 phases at once, like what is your thought on rollout, and like just in general, are you thinking of starting additional programming? Like, are you thinking that this year is your planning year and next year you will be expanding? Or are you thinking this is something a couple of years from now?
No,
Or are you
I
thinking
think-
spring? Like, what is your timeline?
My timeline, if let's say everything goes well and we get good parents, focus groups, we get good data, piloting things in the spring would be ideal because it's a short commitment to seeing what could launch in the fall. The difference between piloting and launching for me would be the thing to see. What I don't see is us overlooking that the 7 programs in place need to be stabilized and improved. They are not autonomous and sustainable the way they are right now. We have currently vacancies, we have staffing problems, hiring problems. It is not hey, that's done, let's move on. And it doesn't mean one or the other, but it is both and. So I do not currently see the 7 KLAS aftercare programs as stable enough to just kind of move on their own energy.
Right.
So we want to keep that, we want to get that stable before we start to expand.
But we're gonna need another name for it if we're not gonna call that one KLAS, if KLAS is gonna be the bigger one, because people are gonna wanna know, what is the $1 a day one?
Yeah, that'll be
That's the one.
that'll be end of the chain here. Doing a naming change right now would be just disruptive and not good disruption, like the kind that would be super confusing. So we're not gonna open KLAS at a new school, but it's something else until we're really clear on branding and communication. That's pretty far down the road right now.
One piece of expanding we are doing, working with the city, is the TK program.
Right.
Yeah, at the 3 schools, which is pretty exciting. I think that the city today told us October 1st.
That's the goal.
Schools is that going to?
This is at San Miguel, Ellis, and Bishop.
Yeah.
And October is the ideal if the facilities are ready and enrollment is ready. Some of the schools had paused because of conference week and seeing whether that would conflict with getting kids there the first day. So that first week of October might be enrollment week, but it is pretty exciting to see that ready to go.
Yeah, it was hard for the city to staff. Our TK and K classes get out early for 6 weeks of school, so it was hard for the city to staff that. So that's why, October 1st.
So they're gonna take care of the after school for TK?
That's the goal at the 3 schools. We're not sure about enrollment numbers yet, but it looks like we could actually enroll all 3.
Paul, before you go on, I just want to address one piece that Bridget brought up, which was regarding the number of students that need support academically. We are working as Teaching and Learning to assess that. Dr. Valentine, we made some shift this year with regards to academic interventions. So we're doing assessments. Also, the intentional work that we're doing around our Spanish-speaking ELs, we're assessing that. So one of the things that's a part of the KLAS work that Paul's talked about and Dr. Valentine are doing is we're trying to assess what are our needs and what is the right fit in order to intervene appropriately. Because for some of the students with the level of intervention that they need, that may require daily after-school intervening in addition to the interventions that we currently have in place.
Right.
So as a part of this whole assessment, that intervention piece is also a part of the assessment. And we're going to be conducting and looking at that site to site and also seeing how the assessment strategies and supports that we're putting in currently, how that is impacting our bottom line of progress for students. And then we will build upon that to see what needs to be put in for what we might consider double dosing or more targeted type interventions.
Oh yeah, I'm not even talking about the KLAS, how it is now. I'm talking about like, when you're talking about the whole umbrella, I absolutely think that the academic piece is gonna have to be there.
Oh yeah, yes, absolutely.
And for that piece, I really think that, I mean, we've said it, the whole board said it before, we really have to get the transportation worked out for the kids who ride the bus. So.
Yeah, so in this expansion of the KLS as it's going to be, the part of the kids who are staying right now in the after school will start getting some academic instruction during the day somehow, but not necessarily from teachers, but from parents.
So there are no credentialed teachers that are staffing any KLAS aftercare programs in Sunnyvale right now.
Yeah.
Credentialed teachers doing the KLAS right now, they would be offering tutoring. There's different places that's occurred, but any academic support right now is happening from the KLAS paraprofessionals. It's different site by site. One of our high performing sites is Ellis, where the KLAS coordinator meets regularly with the academic teachers to talk about homework support. And some of the academic grade levels have started giving assignments that can be a little more, not simple, but clearer for the KLAS staff to use with students. That is pilot. It's happened organically. It's not something we could duplicate yet, but that's the model. That's where the KLAS staff are connected well enough with faculty members to say, hey, what'd you guys work on today? We have an hour to help with it, and they're providing that academic support. What we can't expect is KLAS paraprofessionals to duplicate instruction. It's just a big lift for them to do that along with managing the program. So we want to equip them, we want to do the best we can, and understand that's not solving what you mentioned about academic support.
Also, most parents are not credentialed educators, so hopefully the homework instructions that are easier for the paraeducators to use are also parent friendly as well.
For the practice, yes.
Like it's actually okay.
And the gold standard is not introducing new concepts in homework.
And so when we add the tutoring system and our credentialed teachers to have after hour intervention somehow, these kids, if they happen to be in the after school, we just take them out and in. But if they are not in the after school, then are we gonna create a system to help them if they cannot pick them up? And are they gonna be staying that day if it's every Monday or whatever? Can they stay for the day in KLS? Well,
The KLAS enrolled students, I know that terminology is getting in the way, but they would be able to check in at their KLAS program and then go over to tutoring for whatever length of time and not be dropped or marked absent or any problem like that. For another student, it really depends on the tutoring model. There's many different ways. It's rarely daily. So whether parents are coordinating pickup or not, students would stay after school and do tutoring. I would be premature to speak about whether transportation is automatically part of that, but that's the model for KLAS students. They wouldn't have to choose one or the other. They could stay.
Yeah, because right now at Fairwood, if you were having an activity, an enrichment activity, you could just go back to your KLS.
Exactly. And we really want to maintain that. And it's not deceptive at all. We want to say this is a school program as well. They're checking in at KLAS to make sure they don't, wander off, and they're going to their enrichment activity and coming back to KLAS.
So last year there was a talk about giving some extra help with math to the kids that were staying in the after school program, and but there was no structural program as I understand, so there is no real data, but this extra help was what, like extra material or games or
I can't speak to the extra help in KLAS last year. What I've found this year is some of the sites are doing structured reading groups. Some of the sites, Ellis, for example, are more focused on mathematics. That seems to have been site by site. It doesn't seem there's any cohesive vision of how we've decided to do that. So all 7 schools have different academic models.
So like, I'm wondering for the board, like, are we like, I mean, what does everyone think about the idea of making sure that there's, like whether it's athletics, the arts, academic, and then affordable childcare, like something like that at every school? Like, is that our overall goal? I mean, can we give the district some feedback so that they, like, are we aligned in that way, or?
I think as much as we can do and we can afford, as much as the school can keep working and we can afford it without.
But I mean, like, I'm saying, like, are we trying to have a baseline of?
Let's let Nancy maybe.
Yeah.
I appreciate the inquiry component of this, because what parents may need may not be what kids might want, and what we might think as adults are most appropriate for that particular program. So I think what we can say as a group is that it's important to extend the learning time. And learning is not just academic learning, it's all those other domains as well. And the delivery model needs to be more child-centric of additional academic support that is going to leverage that opportunity for that particular child. There may be some things that can happen in a more broad way, but if we're really being child-centric, it may be offering opportunities where the same learning the same experience can happen, but different aspects and different dimensions are explored with each child. But what I want to say is that there's a cliff, and we're just about there with childcare collapsing around us. I think parents know about it because they're experiencing, but the community is unaware. Because of the pandemic, about 40% of childcare centers have closed, and they're not going to be reopening because the funding from the federal level is going to be stopping very, very soon. So that having quality programs that safely supervise children and provide an additional enrichment opportunity is something that everybody's going to be seeking. So that's kind of the reality that you talked about, and that's a reality that I would like to be able to partner with the community to address on a bigger, more global level. We can't do it all, but there are some things that we can try to strive for consistency for families. And that's about it.
Yeah, so affordable healthcare, but then the reason why I'm saying this thing about the idea of having sports or, because I know Lakewood and Vargas would have that problem all the time. They have, there's small sites with they would not have very many teachers who could offer the tutorials after school. And so like one semester, the teachers doing tutorials would have, let's learn how to play soccer. And then the next one, it would be, let's do math, because it was the same person doing everything, right? And we have some schools like, I don't know if it's Cumberland or Cherry Chase, where there's like 20 or 30 after school enrichment things that people can enroll in for a fairly good amount of money with hardly any scholarships. And then, Ellis has kind of got things going on where they have scholarship programs through their PTA. You know, Fairwood has a bunch of programs, and then we have schools where there's just really not anything but KLAS. There's like maybe a couple things that they can bring in. So that's where I think the district could, or you know, like they're using all their SEF money or whatever for a after school program for drama for, you know, some of the kids, which is perfectly fine to do, but you just see the difference in availability and the difference in just for childcare and then for enrichment activities. So if we could just agree on like we wanna have a basic balance at each school, or are we just gonna leave it up, or what's your thoughts?
Well, the schools that need it, I think we want to expand as much we can in daycare first, and then academics and the round kid enrichment idea, but also we would like to make sure that the other three schools have something equality to give and to propose to parents. And I was wondering if one of the things that might make it easier, I don't know if it's, if we can create a system that might have like special pricing to the for-profit, depending on the number, I don't know if they give X or Y percentage of scholarships or something like that, that will benefit the kids who cannot pay. Or, I don't know, something to make people give more scholarships and open options for more kids.
There is a model I found for an outside vendor who at one school charges one price and it's subsidized by the district at another school because of the capacity of the school and the students to be able to engage. And it seemed successful. It was wide open, transparent communication to both sites. And the fear was that parents at the site where it's a higher cost wouldn't understand the sliding scale model, but it does seem to actually be functional once you get over that initial, why is it this way? And that's one way to offer equitable things for different prices at two schools in the same district.
Can you share what program that was?
That was a program it was in Campbell, and I don't think it was Starting Arts. It was another kind of packaged drama program that had different fees at different school sites. And the fee difference wasn't held by the organization, it was held by the district.
Just off the top of my head, I know that Cherry Chase and San Miguel both offer chess lessons from Bay Area Chess. And I don't think the district has any funding in that. That's the PTA at San Miguel has raised the money, or the kids at Cherry Chase pay their own way. But if the district could assist in some things like that, I think that would be fantastic. I do have two questions. With regard to academic support for after school for KLAS, I understand that the paraprofessionals aren't going to necessarily be trained in these things. I'm wondering if we could explore partnerships either with the high school district, with high school age tutors, or with the community college district to provide people who might have more, if not training, than knowledge in some of these things. And then secondly, in the interim where we're still working on an after school bus, I'm wondering if we can explore enrichment opportunities at lunchtime, like having a lunchtime chess lesson or a lunchtime music club, especially at the sites that have heavy bus needs.
Sure, yeah, I think that's something when we do this kind of review of what's existing, seeing what's already at the schools through ASB and through the club process. I think the middle schools even are doing clubs, not duplicating with central ideas, but going what is happening in lunch enhancement is a great start. And to the other point, yes, I think we could look at partnering with high school and whoever else in the community to see if students need tutoring hours, need community service hours. How do we do that safely? Make sure there's good monitoring. Yeah, excellent.
Okay, so it's 7:04. Do we just add a couple of minutes, or do you want to extend it until 7:10 or?
I think we should have a discussion about Bridget's point about whether or not we should have that baseline, so I think that.
7 or 10, okay?
Yes, so let's try to go for 7
Excuse
or
me,
10.
Board, before you go into your discussion, I do want to bring you back to one of the points that Paul talked about, because I think it informs the process, and that's his assessment that we have planned. I think to make decisions before that assessment information might be a bit premature in some ways. I could see a core and a foundation, but I think the assessment information is really important. So It aligns with what a community wants, which also aligns with our goal of having community type schools at each of our schools, so that what is offered at each school is reflective of that school community and what the parents and families need school to school. So I just want to kind of clarify that as you go into the discussion.
I think that we understand that, and I think that we heard that the fall is planning, and even the spring is still planning, and maybe some piloting, and that really you're thinking about next year. So I was just, my understanding is that like, we're not making a decision here, but we just want to kind of either, build that thought partnership or just have that discussion and see where other people are thinking on it. That's what I'm interested in, not having a total decision, but like hearing what other people's ideas are on that. So my question was just sort of like, what kinds of buckets would you want to have at every school, or like, are there some things in common that you would be interested in?
So I guess what.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, so I guess what I would say is that I would be less concerned about the buckets, because I think everybody wants the same thing. The question is, how are they delivered? And that's something that we need to have the assessment for, that there's not one way to provide all of these opportunities. And it may be in a cycle in the wheel, but to have an expectation that every day, every child's going to get all of these things is not programmatically realistic.
No, but I heard what you're saying. I was thinking like, I was thinking it more like in multiple intelligences, where there's some kids who, like we went out and we talked to Isabel and I talked to the principal, like Tara over at Bishop, and we were talking to her about music, and we were really excited about it. She's like, yeah, but like some kids might want to play basketball, and we're like, oh yeah, so it's like just this idea of having, that's what I was thinking, is having a variety of things where like every child could kind of find their, there would be something for everybody. Because I mean, again, there's a couple schools where like there's a lot on offer, and then there's other schools where there's nothing. So I'm just asking, like, what would the baseline be if there was one? And I hear what you're saying, like, but.
And do you think there is a way, because every school has a waiting list, and I imagine that if we offer 100, we will have 100 takers.
So you're referring to a wait list for KLAS, not other activities?
Yes, for the after school. So if we offer the $1 a day program for 100, I'm sure that it's gonna fill up. Is there a possibility for expand, maybe not 100, but expand this program?
Since it's my first year seeing the wait list at this point, I got interested. One of them was at 28 students, which is another adult. And I said, well, why aren't we just adding? And the clarity from that site coordinator is this ebbs and flows through the year as students depart KLAS and other students enroll. So the wait list now is not a good indicator of staffing needs. It's not like we need to staff for the wait list at its highest level. Those are not all students that would still come to KLAS if there were a spot. So if we did KLAS at 10 schools at a capacity of 100, I think it would be ahead of that assessment piece still to see how many students would use the program and stay through the year. So right now, because I said, let's get another person in place. And that site coordinator was like, no, that's not how this works. She was very patient, but she's like, no, we don't just start throwing resources at the need in October, because that's not what it's going to look like in January and February. So
what I remember the practical aspect of this. Maybe there are parents who, reasons why to drop it. There are parents that maybe they don't work every day, but 3 afternoons or different schedules, and you need to be there every day until 5 at least in order to not lose it. So maybe for them work in a different way. Or maybe if you were on a waiting list and you still need to work and it's already October, then you are just gonna try to find another solution or stop working completely for that year.
That's a good point.
So you just don't look for that after a certain point. Because it is not working for you.
And that is a limitation. I don't have my head into all the funding pieces yet, and Dr. Valentine's been very helpful, but it takes me a while. That there is an expectation of attendance that is tied to us being able to keep that program funded well. So a student can't do Tuesday, Thursday, and then the following week, Monday, Wednesday. It's just not sustainable.
Yeah. Yeah, and it express also a real need of the state, and that's who we want to serve. So is it because there are not enough people who will provide these services and will come and work for us, or is just because we don't believe there are enough kids?
At this point, we believe there are not people that would extend into the 8 hours. This is a 2-hour position, sometimes 2.5. So there are not staff members. We're not staffing our existing capacity fully yet. We are still daily using subs to fill the existing KLES positions.
Okay.
So it's a combo of not enough staff and not knowing for sure how many students we need.
Correct. I think the primary problem would be the staffing, that the number of vacancies that we're filling daily, or frankly, that administrators are stepping into at CMS. Ms. Jamie Bradley is stepping in daily into KLAS because of a vacancy. And that isn't sustainable long-term, but it's what needs to happen. The kids are there. But that is kind of the primary concern right now with stabilizing the 7 schools.
And I know that it has only been a week, but are we able in getting into good conversations with the Hispanic Foundation to fund some of our after-school programs for the?
We've responded, we got the communication, I think that was at the end of last week. I had some messages coming in, I'm not sure when, but we will be reaching out to have programming, and that's something Paul and I will be talking about. And then we'll set a meeting, because one of the things I'm not certain about is actually, do they fully fund it? Is it a scholarship? Is it a sliding scale? So I'm not exactly sure what that funding structure looks like, but once we understand more, it definitely is on our list of considerations when we look to programming, not even just for the kids learning after school programs, but also working with Mr. Watts, because we started looking at some of the programs we visited, and he'll be talking about some of that in a bit. So we're looking at a lot of different things and assessing which one fits financially, programmatically, and also with their vision and outcomes for students. So we will be looking at it though.
Okay. And then, sorry, I lost the idea. Anyone wanna have a last comment or idea to share related to this point? Yes.
So they I think kind of partially answers Bridget's question, and then also just my thoughts to staff. I would say I think it was similar to what Tasha said, but she said it like way better than I would have said it, so I'm glad you shared that. But I think, like, I like the direction we're going, and I think like we need the assessment really to like have more thoughts, right? I feel like the district already is thinking about, like, they want a variety of things at different school sites, right? Like we know it hits different needs, and so I think we're already on that path. I think that's what they're already thinking about, and I don't want to dictate a specific set. I think as they're gonna go do the hard work of really finding out the needs, then I think what would be great is the comeback, right? The comeback here is what we found, and then great, like we can chime in a little bit of like, okay, that's great, run with it, or that's great, what about this piece, and then run with it or whatever. So that would kind of be what I would like to see.
Okay. Any more
So
comments?
the one last thing is, it would be wonderful if you could present this at a challenge team meeting. That brings in a lot of different players who can add resources, financial and natural services.
We smile because we were just talking about
September 26th is the next challenge. Just the closing piece for me is there's a microcosm of this that has been kind of my driver. My wife and I researched summer camps for our daughter, and we had them all laid before her, and none of them passed muster. She ended up taking sign language, which wasn't even one of our lists. And we put a ton of time into prepping, and grandma was going to drive on Tuesday, and all of it fell to interest and passion. That doesn't mean we let her do it because it's sign language, but we don't want student choice to drive this, and we don't want our sense of urgency. We want to have data so we don't deploy something that isn't going to land somewhere that's going to be used. That doesn't mean we want to take forever to do it either. So I do think spring is when we like to see something starting to see if it's taking root.
What data do you currently have, and when can we learn more?
Sure. So the data we currently have is only around the 7 schools. We have attendance rates, we have history, enrollment, things like that. The new data won't be until the panorama window opens in September. So September 25th to October 6th, I think, is that window. That's when principals will start working with me to do like a formal what exists at your school, how is it funded, how is it attended, how frequently does it occur, what's going on at lunch, all of that at every school, not just the 3 that don't have after school
So
care.
maybe once that comes out, maybe that's something Mike could put in a weekend report for us.
Yeah, sure.
Well, and will you be having conversations about and pilots regarding academic things in the spring as well?
I wouldn't be able to speak to that yet, but I would think yes. I think we want to look at obviously math for one, but also how are we targeting after school academic support without that? That's one of the strands. So
Yeah.
yes,
Okay.
premature for me to say
Not
yep.
as part of KLAS, I'm just saying as part of your other.
The
grander-
broader kids
The
learning after
broader
school.
kids learning after
Yes.
school. So again, and I'm not even talking, I get KLAS.
Yeah.
And as what you were telling me this week, maybe there is a system that we can create or a possibility with the TOSAs or with some instructional helpers that can start later during the day and then do their 6 hours until the end of the day with small groups or something from these programs or special kids targeted that can stay few days a week or something. So maybe there is a program where you can get creative and use the innovation card that we gave everybody last year.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right, let's go.
Okay.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
Let's do it. Okay, so it's 7:15 or 7:16. Board, do you need, I don't, but I'm okay if you guys need 5 minutes before we start.
I think so, because I think then we're probably just gonna sprint to the end, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So let's have the 5-minute break right now is 7:17, so we'll be back in 5 minutes for sure. It's 7:22.
Are you gonna drive by yourself tonight? I'm gonna drive with you. I'm driving because I'm getting horse
Mostly. And you're already in your evening break.
There was definitely like a couple weeks where it went from. I've been to, oh yeah, you're fine.
You were too.
Great. I can't, yes, yeah. I can't wait to see
Oh my God.
Right in the middle, right?
Could be under alias.
I just said, that's what you said.
Yeah.
I have my
So I have a thing where like I can never run right so fast writing cards and when we're in education to craft cards constantly. So I made my thing to look up the date of whoever's birthday was on it, and I read a fun fact about people. Yeah. So one time Nicole Fiala, there we go. It's so good. Guaranteed always something around. Yeah, it works really good. So someone did it to someone because they know that I use it. And then they're like, did you know that Tina Turner is your birthday buddy? Or whatever.
Okay.
They are special cough drops. You know I get those.
It is 7:23.
Is it as good as black?
And with that, we are renewing the session of tonight's regular board meeting. And now we are in number 4, sorry, a comment from the board and the superintendent. And we're gonna start with a handout the line, we can start with Nancy.
Last meeting, I forgot to mention that I have been doing a lot of engagement with the Legislative Action Committee at Santa Clara County School Board over the summer, and I've been doing lots of reading. I will send you the article that I kind of referenced about the cliff of childcare collapse that's coming, so that you all have that as a background. Let's see. And I did want to notice in my reading that US News and World Report put out their best top high schools. And guess what? Fremont Union High School District has all of their high schools in the top tier. And that's an awesome kind of thing. I think from Sunnyvale's perspective, we only think of the high schools that are in the Cupertino section, and we don't realize how good the high schools are that we feed into. So I just wanted to give a shout out for our high school district. Thank you.
Okay, so I had my first night teaching again last night as ESL instructor at the high school district for the adult school. And it was super exciting and fun. One of the things that I learned from the onboarding was they showed us a slideshow of parents, you know, or just people in general, what they thought was important about learning English. They have like around 800 students there. So across 3 different sites, every level, you know, newcomers to advanced. And the number one most popular thing that they felt was of high importance for learning English was to communicate with your child's teacher. And the number two rated highly important thing from everybody was helping your child with homework. And the number 3 was getting a better job. And I just thought that was like profound for reading, right? I was like, okay. And that informed my walkthroughs at back to school night. You know, I went to 4 back to school nights. They were all really welcoming. A couple of them were, you know, really making that, making moves to make it more accessible and welcoming for the Spanish-speaking families. Like Vargas had grade level presentations and with full translation. Ellis had most of the slides that when we walked into the classroom, most of the slides had Spanish and English on the slides. So I was really appreciative of that, and I just hope we keep moving in that direction of, you know, continuing to work towards really making people feel like they can participate and feel included, because it's so important to them. And Eileen and I, just for notes, Eileen and I have a meeting set up next week to review that handbook. So we'll work with Jesus in order to have something ready to review at our January meeting. And then I think, yeah, that's all I have for now. Thanks.
My mic works. Okay, so I took my first master's in governance class at the Fremont Union High School District. It was fun, it was in person. People from all around the state came up. I've been spending a lot of time at the high school district office, generally. Anyway, so it was nice to be there again. One of the things that they showed was this child, his name was Dalton Sherman, and he gives a speech. He's very, very good, especially like as a 10-year-old, and we looked him up later, and he's a motivational speaker now, and we're like, of course. And he asks this group of teachers, I think it's in Florida, no, it's in Texas, do you believe in me? Like, do you believe in me? Do you believe in my classmates? And it's such a great and inspirational speech because he doesn't explicitly call out like, and you should believe in me, and also all of my peers. Because I think it's so easy to see potential the way that we're conditioned to see it. When I tell people that my kid was state ranked in chess, that's shorthand for, you know, for something, for he's meant for greatness or something. But if I told them, you know, he really loves Minecraft, that means something completely different, and maybe it shouldn't. When I went to Bishop's SDC summer school over the summer, there was this one child who I remember, and he was nonverbal autistic in the SDC classroom, and he was having a really hard time. He was self-harming, he was hitting himself, and his one-on-one eventually gave him a marker, and he started writing. Like, he was in kindergarten, I think, and he started writing, but the way he wrote, his handwriting, first of all, looked like Times New Roman. It was impeccable, but he didn't write it left to right. He started in the middle and he kind of wrote out. And he wrote, "I Want Go Home" song. And that was just so cool because he understands to a level that a lot of people wouldn't expect a nonverbal autistic kindergartner to. And he was so able to communicate that need, and everyone was so receptive to hearing what he wanted, and they couldn't give it to him. But he was able to do that, and I just love that we're able to see potential in all our children that way. I went to Lakewood's open house as a parent. I also stopped by Lakewood's preschool, which I'm always very popular at because people like hearing success stories. They like hearing that my son was in SDC and then graduated to Gen Ed. And I always like attract a crowd of people who want to hear how that happened. And I always feel a little bit bad because not everyone's going to make it to Gen Ed. But I do think it's important just as a parent to hear that sometimes that does happen. It's really hard as a parent to get that diagnosis, and it's like a mourning period almost because you have to let go of a lot of your expectations. And it's hard to talk about that because of course it should be about your child and not, your expectations. But it's still worth discussing, and it's always worthwhile, especially with a group of parents like that, to let them know, to give them hope, I guess. Whenever my son goes in for school-based counseling, we do an intake, right? And they ask about a child's strengths and weaknesses. And I love this because I get to go on about how great my kid is. And then the weaknesses, because I'm his parent and I see these things. And I just think it's so important that that's what we owe to children, to see both their strengths and weaknesses as parents, as educators, as adults generally, just to honor the whole child and see them for all that they are. And
and I'm always after that. Mine's just a fun, I just want to share one fun thing from yesterday. I was sharing mine right before the meeting. We had been invited to Homestead. Some of their buildings were redone and they had kind of a grand opening. So we've been invited to that. So I had gone to it, and then some of us were walking around. Some of us the ASB president had been there and she had spoken. And then she walked some of us around. So I got a chance to talk to her a couple times on the walk. And it was just a fun thing because, when she got to talk, it just reminded me, I went back to my high school, I was at Fremont, I was student body president. So that was kind of fun. But then when her and I were chatting, I just kind of said that to her, and she's actually one of our grads. So she was at Cherry Chase and SMS. So that was fun. And all the Homestead kids, one of ours who's the student body president. But we just had this fun, we were in a government class. And so she was talking about that and how she loves that class and her US history AP. And I was like, those are my favorites. And she asked what I studied. And I said political science, but I actually thought really seriously about being a teacher because I love education. And she was like, me too. And so it was just this really fun connection, and I told her I was on the school board and I said, hey, maybe someday you'll be where I'm at. So it was just a fun moment to connect with a student. It's not one of our students, she's a lot older. It was more almost like adult to adult kind of conversation, but it was just a fun moment that I got to have yesterday that I wanted to share.
Thank you. It has been the last couple of weeks great opportunity to see as many schools as I was able to. I was able to get to 6 of the open houses, but a lot of them were same nights. So a lot of them were happening simultaneously. So I couldn't make it to the middle schools, any of them. Also because I was thinking yesterday in going, and then I realized it was my own kid open house. Columbia, sorry about that. But it was great to see the kids and all the teachers with so much enthusiasm and so many things happening. So that was kudos for everybody. In the last couple of weeks, I think one of the great meetings we had was with the Hispanic Foundation. Hopefully we can have a great partnership with them because they are offering a big palette of programs, and I really do hope that they are as great as they sound because they have a lot of other nonprofits and consultants that have great projects, and as they described it to us, that they They will find what is it that we need, find the person who give it and give us the money and bring it to us. So it sounds pretty good. Hopefully it will work like that. Who knows? Other than that, and there was the state of the this 50th anniversary of the celebration of the Commission of the Status of Women, and it was very interesting. It was great to see not just so many local people and so many leaders in our community locally, but also one of them mentioned it, until one of them mentioned it, I don't know if we noticed that the three main speakers were women of colors, were African American and excellent leaders and women, and that was amazing to see such a diversity and such a great panel, and all talking about the future of our, of women and the future of our girls and our students. So that was a very neat event. Hopefully that will keep moving forward. And we did have a great Bond Citizen meeting last week, and we saw at last the classrooms from Ellis at the classrooms. So I hope that that we are gonna keep opening many things. Yesterday I went also to the opening of the other bond results that is happening here inside for our kids, which is the homestead. So there were a lot of people from different boards and commissions around in Sunnyvale and Cupertino, and we saw, the power of another big bond, and we are so looking forward to the next building and the next great thing that we can do, just like the new buildings at Homestead. Hopefully there will be our big buildings in SMS. So yeah, very busy few weeks. We're starting, running this year. We touched the floor running, they say, and hope this is gonna be an awesome school year.
Thanks. So as you know, Saturday is the Student Equity Summit, which we're very excited about. And again, as you know, we're focusing on amplifying voices of our underserved students. And Paul and his team have done a really good job of really focusing on inviting students when we don't quite get enough out of the group we inviting another batch. And so I think we're gonna have a good group there, and it's the first time we're trying some things. So some things will go really, really well, and we'll learn from other things. But everyone we've talked to, our consultants said, start with student voice. Our inclination was to start with parent voice, and for years we started with staff voice, but they said start with student voice, so that's what we're doing, and I'm excited about it. Thank you to everyone for attending back to school nights, and especially to my team as well. We got them all covered, but more than just getting them covered, we got to see and connect with the community and to see the good things that are happening at our schools. And you're right, I think we've hit the ground running on all my school visits as well. I'm noticing that. And then I'll kind of close with this. As you know, I attended the county superintendent's annual retreat last weekend, and a couple of the items focused on climate in school districts. Really, they didn't focus so much nationally, but across the state and even across our county. And there's some real challenges out there. And on reflecting on that, I think what we've done that we need to continue to do is to, number one, stay true to our values, because our values really are about listening to the whole community and listening to difficult messages, even when they may conflict with our core beliefs. We need to listen to them and make people feel listened to. Remember that our client is the student. Our client is the student. And our equity statement gives us such good guidance into how we listen to the student and what students need, each student needs individually, and valuing each student. And I think if we do that, we'll be okay. We'll be okay. So anyway, that was a good reflection that I had. And so I'm proud of our district and ready for a good year, because we hit the ground running and we're gonna keep running.
Yay. Yes, and as we move then to the next point, the next item in our agenda for tonight, which is number 5, comments from the Sunnyvale Education Association. Do we have a person from the association there? Okay, seeing none, then we move to the next item, will be comments from the California School Employees Association. Do we have anyone who wishes to talk in representation of them? No? Okay. Then we move to the next item, which is comments from the public. This portion of the agenda provides an opportunity for members of the public to directly address the governing board on any item of interest to the public. However, provision of the Brown Act, Government Code 54954.2A and 3, it precludes any action being taken or any item that is not appearing on the posted agenda being commented by us. So time limits will be allocated to public testimony, and those are 3 minutes per person and 20 minutes per public comments. Speakers are asked to give their name and affiliation so that an accurate record is reflected in the minutes. So with that being said, do we have any person online that wishes to talk to us? Remember that if you do, please raise your hand in the feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Okay, seeing none, then we move to the next item. And the next item is number 8, and that will be presentations. And tonight we have a presentation related with summer school. And for that, wait. Well,
Here I am, all right. I get it. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for that introduction. I'm Jonathan. I'm Jonathan Watts, and I'm talking about the summer programs that we offered this last year. And I'm also here with Chin Chin and Ruth Ann from Stanford. Okay, so as usual, we run a variety of summer programs, and we like to kind of highlight that because a lot of times it all falls under the same bucket, and it even in some of the visits you might not see some of these happening. So when you came out, you may not have seen some of the social skills groups that were going on, and I'm not sure if everyone got a chance to see the middle school mentoring peer connections. So we do have our extended school year, which Chin Chin's going to talk about, and also part of that is a social skills camp. We have our summer explorations both at elementary and middle, and this year we partnered both of those entirely with Stanford, which is a huge help. Middle school mentoring, peer connections. We had, unique to this year, I know in past years I've talked, we had bridge to kindergarten, we had different offerings to the youngest crowd that we can get. So this year's unique offering, Daniel Mejia was our teacher who did an incoming Juntos kindergarten class. Which is really neat. So that is students that either were in TK already in Juntos or that had no prior student schooling, but were going to be pre-registered into Juntos. So I looked through the list again of the students that had pre-registered, had filled out majority of what they needed, and then contacted the families to get here. So it's a unique offering. We're not able to do these types of things every year. It's kind of dependent on if we can have staff. Hard enough to find staff to teach kinder or TK, let alone, brand new to a program entering to Juntos, but it was really cool. And then sort of new to this year, we had, I think, one prior, was we did some learning excursions, field trips. So some of this I already shared, I think, in the notes, but I'll just put it up and go quickly through it. So our summer enrollment every year starts with some number and then drops a little bit by the end to some other number. And it's pretty usual that happens. We didn't see, I looked over the past years, it wasn't a significant drop or anything. It's just kind of how it goes. People change plans, things happen. They enrolled and then later on decided they didn't need it. The after in school enrollment was pretty good. And we had both, this time we had it at elementary and middle school, which is unique. Last year, I know when I had talked to you all about offering after school at the middle school, we only had about, I think, 5 families that had reached out, but it was because we hadn't asked. But I had about 5 families that reached out that said it was going to be quite a strain if they weren't offered some sort of after school. So we decided no matter what the number is, like if this is who we're targeting, the families aren't able to come and this is a barrier, then let's do it. So we offered it, and I was actually really surprised when we had signups. We had, I think, originally 60 that signed up. I was anticipating the same as before, like 5 to 10 maybe. Luckily, I had staffed for more. That 60 quickly dropped down, which was interesting. I think to like 20 or so, 20, 25 maybe at the end. But still like a pretty, percentage-wise, that's a decent portion of middle school. So that was huge. And the extra staffing actually worked really well in that case, because when we did have, there was just a couple absences we had at elementary, we were actually able to take some of that staff. So it provided some flexibility, which was hugely helpful. This is the demographic makeup of Lakewood and CMS. Just leave it there for a little bit so that you can look at it. Knowing that we prioritize English learners, Hispanic students, particularly those speaking Spanish, those that we have not served as well as we could, I think we did pretty good in who we recruited, making sure that we're getting our target students served. This is the summer school by the years. We had talked about, I really don't know how we got 855 kids that one year. That's pretty amazing. I'm not sure if we'll ever do that again, but that's okay. And I feel like this number and the staffing and the programs that we had was a really, really good match this year. There's definitely some benefits. I think teachers would always say there's benefits of having smaller class sizes, a smaller school, more easily managed. We changed a couple things at the middle school this year, so it's hard to, really tie one thing to like the success, but the middle school program this year was pretty awesome. And I think went really, really smooth. And there might be a lot of factors with that. I'm not sure if a slightly smaller size may have something to do with it, but it's interesting. And then this might be a little bit hard to read. I wasn't sure how to make this up, but what I did was I put the number of teachers on the left. So each site, Bishop, which was our site for ESY this year, had 7 teachers. CMS, they had 13 classroom teachers. But I wanted to kind of show the makeup of this too. So I took the little logos for STEP, which is the Stanford Teacher Education Program, put it there, and then the little, the Sunnyvale logo, so I could kind of see the makeup, because I thought this was interesting also. So out of the 13 teachers, 9 of those were at the middle school, 9 were STEP recruited, meaning they were former graduates of Stanford, and they amazingly just send out their little tendrils through email and somehow get lots of responses. More than we get publicly posting on EdJoin and advertising to all of our other teachers and everything. So they pretty much built our middle school program. We had 3 of our own teachers. They were solid and it was fantastic. But yeah, 9 out of those 13 were from Stanford. We also had at CMS 40, I think it was like 45 or so teacher candidates, which is amazing. So that's a lot of adults for our middle schoolers, which is awesome. And it's also really neat. The middle schoolers connect quite a bit with the younger teacher candidates. And it makes for a really good peer connection. It also reduces any kind of unwanted behaviors. Just the more of the connections that you can get, the more adults you have, the more things seem to run well and the happier everyone is. So that was really neat. Lakewood, we had 21 teachers. 3 of those were STEP recruited. 18 were from us. And then we had 18 teacher candidates that were there. And then Chinchin's going to talk about some of our other staffing.
Hello, board members. So our teachers are extremely important, and so are our additional support staff. So you can see on this slide here, we probably have 80, 90 staff overall, in addition to all of those teachers supporting summer. Some highlights here. We had 3 resource teachers this year. So 2 of them were at Lakewood and CMS respectively. And although their primary was really to provide the resource minutes for students who qualified for that on their IEP, they were also a resource to the site overall, because we had a lot of kiddos who didn't qualify for ESY services, who had IEPs, who attended summer explorations. And so we were they were responsible for making sure the teachers got the IEP at a glance for those students, and they were the people that the teachers could go to consult with, like, how do I support these students with these accommodations and modifications. So it was nice to have a resource there since, the psych who's usually there is not there in the summer. And our third resource teacher, Jimmy Choi, she actually helped me run the Peer Connections program, which I'll be talking about in a few moments. We also had amazing related service providers, social workers and behaviorists who really helped meet the social, emotional, and behavioral needs that many of our students who come to summer have. And just, you see so many support staff, right, 70 of them. Couldn't do it, obviously, without our front office. And those essential KLAS staff who, Jonathan already mentioned this, but if we didn't have KLAS staff who were there to run a KLAS program, it would have been prohibitive for a lot of students to attend summer in the first place. And then, of course, our amazing food services staff who, in different ways, really worked super hard to provide nutrition for all of our students. There was just a ton of kiddos at Lakewood who accessed food every day, and at Bishop, we worked with the cafeteria staff to really individualize the food that the students got based off of what their preferences and dietary restrictions were. So definitely an all hands on deck kind of thing.
That picture that was up in the top right, I think it was even bigger at one point, but it was quite a feat. The first few days we were trying to, as always, when the beginning of the school year starts, you think something's gonna happen and then you have to do things differently. So this was wild. We had an entire cafeteria filled with all of those. Food services was amazing. They would come out, we had paras out, and we would package it all into little to-go boxes. They pivoted, Lori helped really quick. Within 3 days, we completely kind of revamped how this was going to happen so that it was much more smooth, so that they weren't taking food on the bus and spilling. And so having that extra staff, just the flexibility to be able to kind of have all hands on deck to solve this problem, get it done really quick, and then turn around and have a system for the rest of the summer was really amazing.
So this slide is a little bit about the extended school year program. So just a quick reminder and overview, the extended school year program is for students who have IEPs who qualify on the basis of established regression and challenges with recouping progress that is lost. So this year we had 201 students who met qualification criteria, and of that, 159 attended, which is actually our largest ESY in a while. I think the last couple of years I looked at it, it was around 130, something like that. And I was looking at the numbers and the makeup, and a lot of those kiddos are kiddos with more extensive support needs. So that really spoke to us needing staff who had more of that experience and that kind of thing. So that was definitely a challenge, finding the staff that would be the most appropriate supports for those students. But ESY was at all 3 sites. Bishop was our primary site, and that was our SDC only site that also had related services. But at Lakewood and Columbia as well, we had special day classes, we had push-in and pull-out related services for students who were attending summer school who qualified for those services. And we also had drop-in services for students who weren't attending summer explorations or ESY, but still qualified for speech or something like that. So we had a variety of things going on. The nice thing about the extended school year is that, with our kiddos who have more of the needs, we have a little bit more wiggle with our staff in terms of providing a little bit more support. So we had OT push-in groups for all of our SDCs at Bishop. We had speech push-ins for all of them. We had our APE teacher come out and do a field day for the entire campus at Bishop. So that was really fun. And then we also had the social skills camps, which we provide for students who might have an IEP, but they didn't really qualify in any way for any kind of program. But we know that summer is an important bridge for them. And if they didn't have some kind of social skills support, they might struggle a little bit coming back. So we had at least 20 kids attend that group. I mentioned that the goal of ESY is really to look at trying to minimize regression. And so looking at the data, our teachers ran 439 goals and we at least maintained progress or made it on about 89% of them. So that was really great. And then the Peer Connections program, this was a new program that we piloted this year with Bishop being an SDC only site and wanted to make sure that there was some opportunity for inclusion, even if we didn't have a summer explorations program running on the site concurrently. So we took this model that we had kind of found, or I went to a talk at AXA last year, and it was about peer connections really. And there was this high school that was running a program where an elective course in the high school was to sign up for this class where they were going to an SDC teacher. The SDC teacher would provide lessons, but then they would also be assigned a peer buddy, and they would go into the peer buddies classes as part of their time in that class. And then they had work that they were doing throughout that as well. So we took that model, adapted it to try something this summer at Bishop. And so we had a really quick turnaround. We were trying to recruit some of our rising and 7th and 8th graders from Sunnyvale Middle School and Columbia Middle School to try to participate in this program. We got lucky and had at least 7 that were maybe strongly voluntold to kind of to participate in this, but you know, they really had a lot of fun with it. So they became peer mentors to some of our SDC students at Bishop who became their peer buddies. So this was a 3-hour-a-day program. It ran the same duration as the summer program itself. They came in, we had a really soft start with them. Like the Jimin took them over to the Magical Bridge playground to kind of show them an example of, you know, just like adaptations and stuff like that in real life. They spent a couple of days shadowing the classrooms and just observing from a distance. And then they got, you know, started getting familiar. So their day usually included some kind of lesson in the morning, 2 rotations with different peer buddies in different classrooms, and then an end of day reflection about what they saw and learned and things like that. So on the side here is an example of one of the culminating projects from one of the peer mentors about what they learned about their buddies, about inclusion. And, you know, when you were talking about just learning about the strengths and the challenges and just seeing the potential in everyone, I feel like that's what each of the peer mentors ended up seeing in every one of those kiddos. And so, you know, that poster is there, but if you get a chance, I also brought like live examples of some of those posters and put them back there because just reading them made me tear up a little bit. And so if you get a chance to kind of walk through and take a look at them, please do.
Yeah, I didn't realize when she had stuck this in the slides that a student made that poster. I thought this was either like an infographic they got online, or maybe Chin Chin had a hidden talent I didn't know about. But yeah, that was amazing. Okay, and we kind of already talked about incoming juntos, but yeah, that was neat. I hope to be able to offer these similar types of things. When we had Bridge to Kinder, that was great. This adds another layer to it, preparing students for schooling, which is pretty neat. And learning excursions. So these are 2 different, so at elementary, they partnered, and I think we're brainstorming with some of the Stanford STEP teacher candidates that were working together, and then came up with like different ideas and thought, you know what, let's see if we can get every grade level to go. So I think every grade level went on some sort of a learning excursion at elementary, which was neat. So some were walking, some of it was busing to different areas. So we had, like on the right, this is an amazing taco truck that's over at Lakewood Village, the one that parks next to I go there quite a bit, it's next to the gas station that's there. And this was actually, they were talking with the owner about small businesses and what it takes to run a small business. And then they were also incorporating different lessons about cultural foods. They had I think this was Annie Wen's class, I think? Yeah, another STEP recruited, but returned. She's been with us multiple years now, and she does this amazing food unit with literature and everything else. And so this time added in this. So I think last year they might've gone to Chavez Market. They did a walking field trip to Chavez Market. On the left, this is a new one. I had not heard of this before. This is a place in Sunnyvale called, I think it's Animal Assisted Happiness, which is really amazing. And so they went, and it's exactly what it is. I would like to go there. I missed it. Something was going on where I couldn't join. I really wanted to join. I'm allergic to half the animals, but I would still pet them and be happy.
They open on Saturdays.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, once a month they open on Saturdays.
Cool.
The general public? Yeah, Tuesday afternoons and some Saturdays.
Very neat. Okay. And then this was, I don't know if this is 4th or 5th grade, I think. Julian Morel, and then you can see Hector in the back on the right hand. So they took, this was something that they just kind of came up with. It was clever. They wanted to see, in downtown San Jose, they have a ton of different murals, and they actually have like I think you can look up and they have like a suggested kind of mural walk where you can go around and see all the artwork and they have like the cultural stories behind each one. So I think they even on the left, that was a painting. It was all about, I think, Oaxacan culture. And it was on the side of a restaurant. And they ended up talking with either the artist or the owner of the restaurant and was telling about the story about the whole thing and each component of the picture. So we talked about, oh, over here's agave, and talked about the importance of that in the culture, and then what she was wearing. And so they went to quite a few of these different places. And I think they even took a preview beforehand. They went on the weekend, the teachers did, to like walk through and pick out the ones they wanted, made a whole map of kind of where they were going to go, what questions they were going to have. And it was, yeah, it was really neat. And then I just wanted to highlight again, if you haven't heard the thread throughout here, our partnership with Stanford and all the benefits that we get out of it. I don't even know if that's all of them. I feel like there's more than what's pictured on the left, but that's the cohort of new teachers that were both assisting us and that we're benefiting from this partnership, which is really cool. So we also had, like at the middle school, one of the change that I had mentioned was we had tried this passion project elective period in between the two core instructional blocks in years past. And it met needs of students. They did like the elective. They really enjoyed having that time. But what I found through some of the feedback that year, I think, was a lot of the teachers that we get from middle school are recruited. They typically teach their single subject credentials. So history is their thing or math is their thing. And a lot of them are high school also, which I think sometimes tends to be like math is even more their thing. And they're like really into it. So it was a stretch for some, I think, out of their comfort zone to offer an elective. And therefore, sometimes it wasn't as structured as probably students could have benefited from having in that time. So it provided some benefits, but we thought, you know what, let's try something different. We heard from the students, and I think we can kind of adapt and make something else that will both give them that break in between two academic blocks, but also maybe not be so hard on the teachers. And so we actually used a lot of the Stanford teacher candidates, and we just extended that break, and we had it more of like a get your food and then play outside, more of a physical activity. So we flooded them with adults and balls and different equipment and stuff. So that was kind of neat also. It gives the student teachers an opportunity to interact with them outside of the academic setting, which is always good to make these peer connections. And to make also, you know, fewer behavior problems in the classroom. When they feel accepted, they have someone to go to. Yeah, so that was, I think, a really good addition to that. I think that might be it. Yes, okay, because the clicker's not doing anything.
Perfect.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you very much
Thanks.
for all the work in this presentation and, well, obviously for all the work during summer. I was able to visit all the sites and they were amazing. And the middle school really, I observed classes where you have so many adults caring of a small group, doing these great exercises about, you know, writing and actually reading very, very interesting materials about civil rights and multiculturalism and things like that, and kids making use of that to make an analysis and give opinions. So it was very, I thought it was a very rounded and interesting program. Thank you very much for all your work on this.
Yeah, I think you might have come on one of the days, I don't know if you were there or not, when they were doing a debate. And it was in an 8th grade, rising 8th grade class, I think. And a lot of those students were return students that I have seen in summer school over and over again. And to see them actually really excited, it's hard to get an 8th grader excited about something, especially during summer. But to see them excited and actually actively debating and feeling as if it's like they tricked them into being in school and participating, because they were debating. They started an intro debating, I think, about like if it's easier to play soccer or basketball. And man, that got them going. Yeah, and they were very passionate about if it was or not, and they had no clue that they were actually being instructed and working on debate skills and everything else. And then slowly, you know, you transition that into academic subjects. So that was really neat to see. I don't remember which one of you were there.
I was in that one too.
Yeah. That was fun. That stood out in my mind too.
Yeah. So, well, thank you for that and all your work. And you wanted to add something?
Can we-
Yes.
Yeah.
Of course, of course.
I just want to express gratitude. The pictures that you saw are worth 1,000 words. And so I want to reinforce that by sharing with you the impact that the Sunnyvale School District has had on the Stanford Teacher Education Program. For our students to start their beginning experiences in your school district is priceless. Mike talked about the climate in the district. Many of these students do work prior to coming to STEP in communities and in schools. And they come with a lot of hurt and harm from what they've seen happen to kids. And they learn about the school district at orientation. They learn about the percentages of students who are socioeconomic disadvantaged, English language learners, as well as Hispanic students. And they're expecting to see the same experiences that they've had in these other places, and they don't. And that makes a significant difference for them to enter their beginning teaching experience. So thank you so much for partnering with us. And I want to share that this partnership goes two ways. So we gain a lot, but driving here, I started to think, what does the district gain? Well, of course, your students gain the opportunity to interact with young people who look like them and have experiences like them. 80% of our students are teachers of color. 70% of them are first generation students. So on your campuses, they experience that and relate to the kids. As you've said, this year was the best summer ever. And we've been doing this for over 12 years. And I really attribute it to Mike's leadership, Tasha and Christina and John Judson. Chin Chin, yes. It was so well organized. We started in late October to begin to plan summer, to talk about the highlights from the year before. And some of the things that happened during the summer, like the learning excursions, was something that came out of our lunch debrief meeting about what we wanted to do. That was really beneficial. But I think when I started to think about what do you get from this besides your kids getting it, I started to think about who works in your school district office. 2 of the district teams are STEP grads. You have an assistant principal in the school district that's a STEP grad. You have over 20 teachers in the school district that are STEP grads, 5 at Columbia Middle School. That's pretty significant to have 5 STEP graduates at Columbia Middle School, the first time ever. And you talked about open house and what you saw with the Hispanic parents. 3 of the teachers at Columbia this summer are Latin students. And they sent us pictures of the parents who came to open house, and they were thrilled by it. The other significant thing is we have students who had such a positive experience during their STEP beginnings, want to come back and be cooperating teachers in the summer. And we had one teacher come from Rhode Island, second time in a row. We had a teacher from Florida. We had a teacher from Texas come, as well as 3 teachers who drove from San Francisco because they wanted to work in the school district. So thank you so much for the support that you give to your students. That makes it a rich experience for our teacher candidates.
Thank you. Thank you. And with that, before we start our comments, I wanted to open it for public questions and comments. If there is anyone from the public who wants to talk in this particular item, please raise your hand now. And not seeing anyone, then we're gonna start with comments from our board. So who wants to start? Comments, questions?
I didn't get a chance to experience summer school this year, but it was well explained, and I like the innovations that I see happening from year to year. So thank you.
keeps going up on, God, this micro, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, and I'm also like right on the table like here, so sorry. Okay, so one of the things, I just loved going to summer school this year. It was so much, to visit, it was so much fun, and you know, you could just really see the energy and the hands-on activity experiments, you know, in middle school, and just so much engagement. And I loved that the coaches this year were actually from the district coaches were recording themselves and doing lessons so that they could utilize and see like what worked and what didn't work. It was really kicking the tires. I really thought they were using their innovation cards because they were really trying to see like, does this work? And like, what happens with the kids when I do this? And they were filming it and then studying it and then gonna use it as teaching tools. So it was just like triple bang for your buck. It was really cool. And then the other thing I was gonna say was that peer connection, what was it at the ESY? Like I really was hoping, like I hope that we continue to do that year over year, whether there's other opportunities for inclusion or whether it remains a separate site, because I just think it's just fantastic to build empathy and compassion and you know, and it's just good for everyone involved. And I don't know if there's any way where we could create something like that. I know Block Middle School pre-pandemic had their they won an award through the PTA, what is that called? Do you remember what that is? They won that.
The Bell Grant.
They won the award, yeah, I don't know, they won this award, like through the big PTA award, that was all because of their middle school inclusion and positivity. And if we could drive things in that direction, you know, I think, you know, Tasha, with your background with special education and just the support for inclusion in our district, you know, overall, I think that would just be fantastic. And I would love to see like a middle school elective that had to do with like inclusion, but also public service, like animal assisted happiness and whatever, like just bring it all together. By the way, if anyone needs service hours, even it's one of the places where you can take kids who are in elementary school, you can go as a parent, you can go with your child and you can volunteer there with your kid if your child happens to be super interested in animals or socializing small animals, small fluffy things. Or goats, whatever. And they'll let anyone clean anything. So, you know, okay. And then anyway, so that's a great opportunity for even elementary and middle school kids if they want to volunteer and they're into animals. And then my other thought is, you know, I would love to see those posters like up somewhere. I don't know, like maybe as a traveling thing to each of the middle schools, or like as you're rolling out the programs, like with a information card of like what happened and about the project or something. I just think it's really powerful to have that kind of a gallery available. I think that's all I had. I'm probably gonna remember something. Go ahead. Thank you, sorry.
Good, Mike. Quick plug for Animal Assisted Happiness. They're having a fundraiser on October 15th. I really love that place. I go with my son. We used to go every Tuesday, and now we don't go every Tuesday, but we go often. And it's just such a great place. There's bunnies, there's guinea pigs, there's goats and pigs, and it's just fun.
It's like bright and fun.
It is just so happy, and everything's like decorated like by themselves, and it's obviously like that birdhouse was very obviously painted by a child, and even their like pigeon coops and things were all very obviously painted by a child, and it's just so happy. Evening at the Barnyard on October 15th is their annual fundraiser. There'll be tacos.
But they come to the sites.
Yeah.
They also, that's their whole program, is they come to schools.
I really like the picture of them in the cafeteria at Lakewood, because I think that's Karen Garcia, and she was the
Yes.
principal at the time, right?
Oh, yes.
Because she just came out. And
It was
with
all
all
hands on deck.
all hands. Yeah, I really appreciate this presentation. Thank you. I'm glad that we're able to offer these services. It was great when my son came back from the year of independent study to be in a classroom again and then like just learn all these things again. And I think it's a great, especially with the Juntos program, to be able to teach children who have never been in the classroom anymore how to be in a classroom.
I'm curious if we talked about how last year we had more, and I think earlier this year we talked about needing more. After seeing the numbers for this year, we saw the numbers for ESY and how those numbers were maintained, how there wasn't any, how there was maintained goals or at least a lack of learning loss. Do you have similar numbers for the non-ESY students? For learning loss or prevention of learning loss or? Oh.
That was much bigger. I thought it was.
I think you had asked, yeah, I think that in the executive summary thing that I sent, I had summarized some of the academics in general, kind of saying like, okay, of the students that went to summer school, here's what % were, I talked about if they were needing improvement in reading or math. And then I think I put the opposite number in too. So of those that didn't go to summer school, what %, because I think that's what you're kind of getting at.
Yeah,
like, is there a large portion, outside that didn't go to summer school that academically, I think you're looking at academics would really need it. And I mean, there is, but it's not as big. Like you can see that we served a really good portion of those that, and even though we weren't primarily targeting based on academics, sometimes it comes out that way. But I do like the idea of like expanding peer mentoring. So I've heard you a lot say like, let's find ways to meet, because there's so many different things that might interest different students and different ways to meet different students' needs. And so I like when Chin started talking about the peer mentoring, I thought this might be a really good thing for a certain group of students that may not want to go to an academic type summer school, may not necessarily need that, but are interested in something else. Like I think this is a really cool offering. And that could be one more type of program. We had also talked briefly, like we had looked into other outside organizations. So we looked at the Jose Valdez Institute, which focuses on math. It's a really, really intensive math summer program. Through talking with like the students, there was another principal that was there and we talked about their experience. I actually went to Valdez as a middle schooler. They've changed it, I think, a little bit. But it would meet some of our students' needs for sure. I don't think it's for everyone. There are some pretty extreme costs associated with it, but it's an opportunity. It is another thing because we're looking at, what are all the different options that we have that might meet different students' needs.
And part of, we've been having conversation with, how to collaborate with the high school and the middle college, not the community college.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the many ideas that were thrown out from the ANSA, that is we are feeder to them. They do have like early education program and, like one of the Hoffman's Award last year was this high school program that taught kids as an elective to early education, but then they have these kids to volunteer one day a week into their elementary schools. So some sort of these partnerships and collaboration, will help these kids, but will also help us with more adults or young people on site. And if I see it, I'll be it kind of mentality.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I have something about the academic piece. So that math boot camp, when I first came on the board, I went to this thing they were talking about extended time. Michelle and I both went to it up in it's like Menlo Park or something, I don't remember where it was. But anyway, the issue was they were talking about, there was a panel of superintendents from different districts and and they were talking about how they got people to participate in their summer school. And one of the things that they said was, you know, to get kids and parents to buy into this idea of an academic, like an intensive academic program, they basically said, they stopped saying that it's free. And they basically said, this is a $5,000 per student or $8,000 per student program that we are giving you. Like, as most people will say, like, yeah, I want my kids to do well in school and I want to invest in my kids' education. And just to actually like put a price tag on it and say, like, this is an exclusive program. And this is trying a different way to come at math or come at reading or whatever, this is an intensive program. And it's not free, and we're committed to giving your child this because we want them to be successful before they're up and out to high school. And so I don't know, I know that there's some of these programs are a little boutique-ish or like very intense and specific, but some of our kids probably need it. And I don't know, I'm open to it whatever the district comes up with, so.
Yes. Did you finish your stuff?
Yeah.
Two things. One, I just wanna say, I think, like, right, Ruth Ann knows a lot about education and is seeing a lot. So I think the compliment she gave all of you guys, like, kind of the highest compliment you could get, right? So well done, well done. Hopefully we can continue whatever, I hope we can figure out what are the things that help this year be even better than others and just kind of keep doing that. That's great. And then I do have a question, sorry, it wasn't in the packet, but just as we're talking about data stuff, it made me think about, I know a while back, like years ago, we hadn't been tracking essentially, right, like students who do summer school, like who do our summer school, how do they do during the school year? Like, is there a difference between our summer school students and those who are in similar buckets, right? So I'm just curious, have we been able to start tracking that? Or have we not yet? Are we planning to? I'm just curious kind of.
Yeah, I'm like halfway there. I have like on each of my dashboards, I have a little summer school thing off to the side. So what I've started to do is, and that's on my like to-do list of all my different data projects. But one of the things I'm doing, I'm trying to look at students in particular that have attended summer school for multiple years. That's kind of where
I'm just now, I was like, it really actually
Yeah.
they've come a few years.
Because I want to
Are we seeing
see.
a difference or not really? I mean, even if it's
Right.
great or not, that's fine, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, I'm even
Hopefully
curious about just, looking in general. I always like to look for trends, just look for things with an open mind. So I'm curious about looking at students that have been in school, in summer school for multiple years in a row. And then looking at academic gains or even maintainment when looking at a similarly demographic group that just didn't attend or maybe just attended one. Just to kind of see,
are there differences?
what might be visible. Yeah.
Well, even thinking about attendance
Mm-hmm.
of regular schools, if that had even impacted that, rather than necessarily focusing only on the academic.
Yeah, that's true. I'll include that too, because that makes sense. Since we know that the more engaged you are in school, the more likely you are even to go to school and attend daily. So that's actually really good. I want to look at that data point as well.
Well, if that's, well.
I have a quick comment for Ruth Ann, just to thank you. So you mentioned sort of in passing that your students now more represent the students in our school district. And I know that came with effort, that it wasn't always that way. When I was doing the hiring and now when Jeremy and Mary Beth are doing the hiring, we're constantly trying to do that. We're trying to find teachers that match our student demographic. And when we looked to the schools of education, we were asking them to do that. And that it's systemic, it's a systemic problem, we know that. So it's not just us in our hiring, it's not just Stanford or San Jose State and Santa Clara and what they're doing. It goes all the way back, it actually comes back to elementary school, the kids and how we're treating them then. And so for Stanford to break that, they had to change their practices significantly and take some, I don't know if risk is the right word, but maybe it felt like a risk, but it was the right thing to do from my perspective. So thank you for taking that effort. That was a big change. If there was, you could probably come up with a graph that shows what the demographics of your population was 5 years ago and what it is now. And then give us an hour on what it took to get there, so I appreciate that.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, one of Alexia's classmates was in that CMS cohort. And, you know, she's like, are you Alexi's mom? Yes, what's happening here? It was like, oh my God, it was really weird. It was fun though, yeah.
Great, so thank you very much. And with that, it's time to move to our next item, which is a review and discussion.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Number 9, and that will be number 9A, review and discussions of the board policy related to mental health. And for that, we'll have Dr. Kashali Dean, who talk is our Chief Teaching Learning Officer. And please go ahead.
Okay, so this first policy is a new one. And it's actually refreshing to see it because it does align with a lot of the work that we've been doing. But the emphasis of this particular board item I'm coming to you with is 5441.5. But it's the emphasis around mental health. It's also tied to a lot of the merging of mental health dollars that are hopefully coming our way to public education soon. But this is just kind of paving the way for that work so that we can really emphasize building resiliency skills for students, counseling supports as they may need them, and just to kind of cope with some of the challenges that our youth are kind of dealing with. And so this policy kind of outlines some of that work. And then in addition to that, us being intentional about the posting of what's available as it relates to mental health services, both inter-district as well as potential supports outside the district and emergency hotlines. So that signage has been going up. We've kind of got something to be compliance, but we will be looking at that further actually to come up something more branded for Sunnyvale to do that. But we're meeting compliance now, and then we will be expanding upon that as we move forward with this particular policy. So coming for your recommendation around this and any questions you might have.
Perfect. So I think we should start with a comment from the public related to this item. Do we have any? 3?
They're not raising their hand, so they're.
I was like, really?
That would be weird.
Okay. Good. Well, if not, then board, let's start the discussion with this item.
I think it's great we have this policy. I think it's great that it aligns with all the programs we have. I know our teachers and staff are the people who have to keep it together all the time, you know, and it's really hard to do because everyone has things going on in their life as well as the work. So I just think it's great. And yeah, we do want to be ready to receive any public fund or federal funding for any money coming our way that we can get reimbursed for. And people, when we talk, Nancy and I have talked to people on the Ledge Action team or just around, and they're astounded at how much support we have for the students and staff. So it's really, I'm really happy about it. So I'm looking forward to saying yes on this one day.
So will the Sunnyvale Center be reflected more in an AR than the board policy?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that again?
So you said you were going to be making this more Sunnyvale centric. Will that be reflected more in the AR teaching than in the board policy?
Not so much the policy, but I was referring to the policy, the portion of the policy that relates to the posting of information regarding mental health services.
Okay.
So that's kind of generic, more generic at this time, but that's what will become more Sunnyvale branded to be posted in our schools. Mm-hmm.
Good. So thank you. Yeah, I think if it's okay, everybody wants to move it to consent item next time. So the next one will be 9B, and this is the review and discuss board policy related to school health services. And thank you for that, Dr. Dean. Please go ahead.
Yes. So this is also related to kind of mental health services, but the focus here is more on kind of like school health services. So in addition to the mental health, but also physical health of children. and looking at some of the support services that we're providing, outlining kind of the supports that we've been providing. And then you'll see the addition here in this particular policy 5141.6, the addition regarding the private pay insurance and the possibility of a sliding scale related to some of those services for our students. And so this would be a huge advantage because currently some of those services have been provided by our psychologists, our social workers, and our nurses. And so if all goes well, this could also be an area by which we may be able to get reimbursed for services that we actually currently are already providing. So this just kind of captures that portion of the funding and also the work to be done within a policy.
Thank you. Is there any public comment related to this item 9B? Okay, seeing none, we move forward. Do we want to have any comment or question related to this item? Okay. Thank you for your work on this. And yes.
Okay, thank you.
Looking forward to it when we move this to the next one. And for the next item, 9C, we're gonna review and discuss board by law 9323 related to meeting conduct. And for that, we have Dr. Gallagher, our superintendent.
Thank you. It was interesting at the governance team development meeting, we talked about, hey, bring back an item on how we conduct meetings so we remember. And as we were talking, I was thinking, didn't I just review one of these? And it was probably like at the beginning of the summer that Jesus brought it to me to review. And it just so happened it came up this meeting. So that was fortuitous. The main things for this bylaw in particular that are adjustments are a definition to comply with the new law about when it's appropriate to remove an individual for disrupting or true threat of force, which is important to know and for us to understand that. Also, we changed the, so our bylaw before said that meetings should end at 10 o'clock and if, or no later than 10 o'clock. And if it's gonna go past 10 o'clock, then there's a procedure for the board to extend it one time for a period of time. Since we start earlier now, we didn't move it, you could change it if you want, but like we didn't move it back a whole hour to 9 o'clock, although that kind of is a goal. I made it 9:30 because I think we're having better discussions and that's what part of that first hour is. So that's the change, the two main changes. And then we also included board bylaw 9320 about meetings and notes, and also Appendix A of the governance handbook, and also a document we found from CSBA's governance best practices guide. Just for our reference, and I don't know, it's up to you how much you want to discuss this, but I would suggest that we hang on to these documents individually and have them and know them so that we continue our best practices in case there's an occasion where we need to make sure that we're really following our rules.
Is there any public comment referring to this item 9C? No, seeing none, then we move to listen and hear from the board. Nancy?
Yes, I think these documents are really great. It would be nice if you could extract them.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. I think the documents are really great. It'd be nice if we could tag them up and have them on our screen so we could just immediately go to them in case there's a hot button that we could refresh our.
Or like maybe have a one pager or something like that with the main.
Correct.
Links.
Correct.
Yeah.
So that it's more visible for us internally, so that we could literally all be on the same page. Quickly in a kind of a.
I mean, like on Google Drive or something.
I don't really know what you're.
Do you mean like in the agenda, like in Simply or?
She wants a document.
No, a document that we could put in, so for instance, we're at a meeting and everything's happening. I'm not gonna go to my governance handbook, but if there's a one pager.
You gotta get closer to your mic again.
Okay, so if there's a one pager right here that's on the screen, then I can click to it and then, okay. So if the intentionality is to be able to manage meetings where there is a potential for.
You keep going from your mic.
So
It's on, you just gotta stay next to it.
So if there's a meeting at which there is some type of disruption, you want to be able to be calm and cool. And if you need a reference, then if it's on our screen as opposed to in an agenda, then we can just tap on it and it would be easy to refresh. And everybody would literally be on the same page.
Any more comments?
Yeah, I think there's on the one that's loaded up onto there's just that little typo that says there's 7 of us and there's 5, but.
Yeah, we're gonna adjust that for 5
Okay,
on the
it's
board.
still on the thing. I mean, on the one that's on the thing.
Cause you can't change the
And change it
agenda.
to 2 hours.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, all right,
So it's gonna be changed before we vote.
I got it, okay.
Okay, if that's it, then we're moving to the next item in the agenda. Let's go back simply, okay. We have review and action and it's gonna be item 10. And we're gonna start with a public hearing and approval of the resolution R2404 in the matter of conveyance to dedicate and convey easement to the city of Sunnyvale. And for that, we have Mr. Burns, Director of Facilities and Operations.
All right, good evening, board. So actually, I just got up here and forgot how you start the public hearing, but we first need to start the public hearing for this agenda item.
So it's like you need to start the public hearing.
Perfect, so if there is anyone from the
We'll just
public.
say I'm opening the public
opening
hearing.
the public hearing for this particular item.
And then you can say thank you.
Okay, if any member wants to speak, any member of the public, please raise your hand on Zoom right now, as there are no members present. Okay, so far none.
You usually just wait a minute.
Yeah.
Jeremy sings the Jeopardy song for us.
I think you opened it at 8:36 and it's now 8:37.
Okay. Okay.
Close.
So we are then closing the public hearing on this item at 8:37. Is there any discussion related or just?
We're approving it this time, right?
Yes, yeah, so this is the second step of the
Yeah, I
two-step
just wanna make
process.
sure.
Yep,
I move approval of resolution R24-04 in the matter of conveyance to dedicate and convey easement to the city of Sunnyvale.
I'll second.
Okay, with that, for everyone who is for this, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, with everybody with ayes, we pass this the resolution R24-4.
sounds good, thank you.
Yay.
The next one is the approval of the 2022-23 unaudited actuals and the 2023-24 revised budget. And for that, we have our Chief Business Officer, Ms. Lori Mango, Mrs. Lori Mango.
Thank you very much and good evening. I'll go ahead and get started. So here's a few highlights of 22-23. Our LCFF, state aid, EPA, and parcel tax came in as projected at $5.2 million. Our property tax and RDA revenue were up $7.8 million over 21-22 for a total of $93 million. We had 8% property tax growth, which is approximately $7.4 million. And the RDA funds that we received were $4.4 million, which is approximately $112,000 increase. We spent some of our one-time COVID CARES Act funding expenditures of $3.9 million. The expenditures include salaries and benefits for teachers, paraeducators, health assistants, and TOSAs, as well as food service, summer salary and benefits. We have approximately $1.5 million left of our one-time CARES Act funding, which will carry over to 23-24. Our overall expenditures increased in 22-23 to $127.2 million, which is an $11 million increase over 21-22. The increase is being driven by negotiated salary schedule increases, FTE increases in teachers, paraeducators, and health assistants. PERS had a 2.4% increase over 21-22, and because both person STRs are calculated as a percent of salary, they will both naturally fluctuate as the salary schedules increase. And we had an increase in contracted services for special education, staff coaching, and professional development, as well as HR system upgrades. Our contributions and transfers out increased to $25.4 million. This is a $5 million increase over 21-22. Additional support for student nutrition fund increased by $73,000. Additional support for our state preschool program decreased by $33,000. The contribution to routine maintenance increased by $790,000. The total special education contribution from the general fund was $20.4 million, which is a $4.4 million increase over 21-22. And we had a decrease in our staff computer refresh of $222,000. So when I close the books, I revise the budget. Not many school districts do that, but I feel like I want to do quarterly updates with our budget. So here's the highlights of our revised budget. Based on the current projection, our property tax payments are expected to increase 7.7% over 22-23, which is approximately a $5.8 million increase. Our LCFF, EPA, and parcel tax revenues are projected slightly below 22-23, and it's $5 million. 23-24 budget includes the Expanded Learning Opportunity Grant Plan, which supports after-school learning. Planned expenditures are additional KLAS support, additional behavior technician support, as well as an additional bus and a bus driver. Based on current information, our charter school property tax payments for Rocket Ship Discovery Prep, Rocket Ship Los Sueños, and Rocket Ship Brilliant Minds are approximately $40,000. Student nutrition and child development have a combined projection contribution total of $228,000. The child nutrition general fund contribution is decreasing in 23-24, and that's directly related to the additional funding with the Universal Meals Program. Based on our current revenue and expense projections, the contribution to special education from the unrestricted general fund is projected at $21.6 million, which is approximately a $1.2 million increase over 22-23. And all negotiated salary schedule increases, as well as PERS and STRs increases, have been included in the budget. So this is a multi-year look at the ratio of revenue to expense in 22-23. We ended the year with revenue exceeding expense by $13.2 million. In 23-24, revenues projected $127 million, which is a decrease of $13.4 million over 22-23. And our 23-24 expenses projected at $129.1 million, which is $1.9 million higher than 22-23. And based on the 23-24 revised budget assumptions, expenses projected to outpace revenue by $2.1 million. So this is a multi-year look at the general fund beginning and ending balances. The general fund ending balance increased significantly in 22-23. This is due to the receipt of fund balance type state funding, which means that we have to recognize all of the revenue in the year that we received, even though we have several years to spend it. An example of this is in 22-23, we received a little over $4 million for the Learning Recovery Emergency Block Grant. We had to recognize all of the money in 22-23, but we have until 27-28 to spend it. So this is a multi-year look at our unrestricted reserves, which is a combination of unrestricted general fund and the special reserve fund 17. For 22-23, $1.875 million of our special reserve fund is set aside for future technology upgrades. $2.5 million of the unrestricted ending balance is set aside for site and department carryover, revolving cash, and stores. The available unrestricted reserves for 22-23 is $42.4, excuse me. For 23-24, $2.25 million of the special reserve fund is set aside for future technology upgrades. $2.5 million of projected ending balance is set aside for site and department carryover, revolving cash and stores. And our 23-24 available reserve is 40 million. So just to quickly wrap up, we ended 22-23 with a general fund ending balance of 32.2 million. Our special reserve fund ending balance is $14.4 million for a total unrestricted reserves of 36.6%. We have positive ending balances in the multi-year projections and will remain a basic aid district.
Okay, that's it. Thank you for that. Do we have any comments or questions from the community? Okay, thank you. With that, board, do we have a motion to approve the revised budget?
I move approval of the annual financial report and the unaudited actuals, which contains the unaudited actuals for the fiscal year 2022-2023.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, so everybody who wants to approve, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and with full approval from the board, we approve the 2022-23 unaudited actuals and revised budget.
Thank you.
And then we move to the next item, which
I
is.
just wanna real fast, I just wanna say thank you for like the updates and the slides, it's always helpful and
Of
you put it
course.
in terms that we can understand it and I appreciate that.
Of course. My pleasure.
Thank you for that. Okay, 10C is the approval of the GAN appropriation limit resolution R 2403. And for that, we have back our Chief Business Officer.
Thank you very much. I actually don't do this calculation. The state software does it, but it's required that you all approve it. But this dates back to the late 70s. So it's designed to constrain local spending by linking year-over-year expenditures to ADA. So since we have such robust property tax growth, our GAN limit increased significantly from 21-22. It increased $13,595,254.47 over 21-22 for 22-23, and that will be the basis of the 23-24 calculation.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Do we have any public comments related to this particular item, 10C? Okay, seeing none, we move for a motion from the board to approve the GAN appropriation limit resolution R 2403.
I'll move to approve the resolution R 2403 in the matter of adopting the GAN limit in accordance with the California Government Code.
Perfect, any second?
I'll second.
Okay, with that, everybody who wants to approve, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, with everybody approving, then we pass the approval of the GAN appropriation limit resolution R 2403.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Thank you for all your work. And now we have the consent agenda items. Any item on the consent agenda is subject to review and discussion prior to being approved by the board if necessary. Any item may be removed for separate action. The public may address the board regarding any items on the consent agenda. And with that, do we have any comment from the public related to the consent agenda? Okay, seeing none. Board, do we want to remove any item from this agenda? Is there any, no?
I move approval of the consent agenda as listed.
Okay, we have a second? And with that, we have a second. So please say aye if you approve the consent agenda items. Aye. Okay, and with that, we approve the consent agenda items and we pass to information agenda, administrative regulation about school health services. Is there any comment that
No, we don't
you want to
discuss that.
present? No discussion or comment? Okay. And with that, we pass to future meetings and adjournment. That will be number 13 in our agenda for tonight. And our next meeting will be Thursday, September 21st at 6 p.m. At the usual place. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. Thank you, Fabiola.
Thank you, Adrian.
And thank you, Adrian.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.